Chapter 2251. This woman hated men very much, but towards women, this beautiful girl from the 7 absolute civilizations was finished after falling into the hands of the purple flame demoness. 10 minutes later, the purple flame demoness was done. She licked her lips as if she hadn't had enough. What a wonderful taste! Not bad, this trip was not in vain. He wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but the Star Lady's skin seemed to have dimmed a little, while the purple flame demoness seemed to have become younger. This was the reason why she liked women. The domain that she cultivated was a heaven-defying domain that allowed her to live forever and never grow old. In theory, as long as there were enough young women for him to absorb, he would be able to remain young forever until his death. The real purple flame demoness should be a white-haired old woman. On the other hand, the women who had their essence absorbed by the Star Maiden had always aged prematurely. At the same time, due to the premature decline of essence, all aspects of the body would deteriorate, greatly affecting the path of martial arts. Star Maiden's hair was disheveled and her clothes were disheveled. Her heart was filled with humiliation and hatred. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine that her chastity would be taken away by a woman one day. She hated him. However, she did not dare to hate the purple flame demonic woman. She could only hate Suyu. Yes, he hated Suyu. If he didn't lie to me, I wouldn't have wasted my time searching for the treasure here and ended up being captured by the purple flame demoness. The hardest thing to hate is oneself. Once their interests were harmed and they were angry, they would subconsciously vent their anger on others. Moreover, he was the kind of person who would vent his anger on safety. The one who had assaulted her was the purple flame demoness. Why wouldn't she hate her? Because the purple flame demoness was a demoness who killed without batting an eyelid. She didn't dare to hate her. As for Suyu, he was a person who had principles and did not kill indiscriminately. Hence, she hated Suyu, not the purple flame demonic woman. Little girl, from today onwards you are my woman. I will help you take revenge for all your grievances. The violet flame demoness lifted the Star Maiden's chin and said, I'll kill that Surushu for you if we encounter her. The Star Lady nodded in satisfaction. Thank you, Senior, but I want to do it myself. All right, as long as you hand the treasure over to me. The purple flame demoness didn't mind. The 3 of them left the hall and headed north. Suyu was in the same direction. Suyu only stopped when he reached a relatively safe hilly area. With a flash of light, an item appeared in each of his hands. One of them was the bracelet. Suyu curled up the corners of his mouth and said, The illusionary technique recorded in Concubine Pianxian's letter is really effective. In the letter, there was the ability to control the entire palace, including how to use the illusion of the Mirage Dragon. A moment ago, when Suyu had touched the bracelet in the Great Hall, he had cleverly replaced it with a stone pearl. Then, he had used an illusory technique to conceal it and successfully deceive the Star Maiden. As for the little black cat, Suyu picked it up and let it struggle freely. He then squinted his eyes and said, It's hard to imagine that you are a treasure and not a living creature. On the surface, the little black cat was indeed a living creature. But in Xiao Dai's shared perspective, the little black cat was a treasure that emitted a faint blue light. Are you the demonic soul stone? Suyu asked as he sized it up. The agile imperial concubine said that the malicious soul stone was one of the 6 treasures that the Sky Legacy Emperor valued the most. As long as one refined it, one's soul would not be destroyed. In other words, it was a soul defense treasure. Moreover, its level was comparable to a doctrine artifact. Unlike a doctrine artifact, as long as the malicious soul stone didn't have a master, whoever obtained it would be able to use it. Suyu's eyes lit up. Ever since the divine 9-dragon Cauldron left his head, he had not encountered a suitable soul defense treasure. The malicious soul stone in front of him was one of the best treasures. According to the agile imperial concubine's letter, as long as he successfully refined it, Even the Sky Legacy Emperor would not be able to harm Su Yu's soul. It was unknown how strong the Sky Legacy Emperor was. However, it was conceivable that among the 7-star civilizations, there would not be many people who could surpass him. After looking for a safe place, Su Yu immediately sat down with his legs crossed and began to refine the little black cat. He sacrificed a drop of his essence blood, fused it with a wisp of his soul, and injected it into the space between the little black cat's eyebrows. The little black cat naturally resisted with all its might. However, as a treasure without a master, how could it resist? After a short while, it was forcibly refined by Su Yu. Meow. After the little black cat was refined, it immediately showed unusual affection towards Su Yu. It jumped onto his shoulder and gently rubbed his face. Su Yu's mind was filled with memories of the little black cat. He murmured softly, "The life-gazing cat? Is that the name given to it by the Sky Legacy Emperor? Does it have a profound meaning?" After thinking for a while, Su Yu looked towards the northernmost area. The love-severing platform was there. It had been some time since he entered the Heavenly Legacy Cavern. It was still unknown whether the love-severing platform had been discovered. There was no time to waste. He set off immediately and headed there. A few days later, a huge chasm suddenly appeared in front of the open plain, revealing a 1,000-foot-deep abyss. Beneath the abyss was an even wider plain. Looking down from above, Su Yu found that he had been on a huge plateau, and the real plain was below him. Just as he was about to jump down, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a few familiar figures wandering around nearby. Among them were the Stone Sword, the Snow Swordsman, and a group of familiar people from the Sea Wolves Pirates. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly. What a coincidence! If they were here, did it mean that the Sea Wolf Path Master was nearby? Thinking of him, Su Yu's heart flickered with intense killing intent. When the Sea Wolf Path Master forced Su Yu to carry out the mission of capturing the greedy Wolf King, he had sworn in his heart. If there was a chance, he would kill him. Unfortunately, Su Yu did not have such an opportunity when he was in the Pirate Alliance. But now that he was in the Heavenly Legacy Cavern, if the time was right, Leader Su? He had found them, and they had also found Su Yu. The Snow Swordsman walked over quickly with a joyful look on his face. They had joined the Sea Wolves Pirates together, but now they had gone their separate ways. Their experiences were worlds apart. "How have you been?" Su Yu smiled. He had a good impression of the Snow Swordsman. "Hey, how could I be fine? I don't have the ability of Leader Su, so I can only wait for death to come," the Snow Swordsman said in shame. Then, his eyes darkened. The poisonous oracle was even more unlucky. He was killed by the Pajuan Emperor for no reason. After the greedy Wolf King was captured, the Pajuan Emperor led his men into the depths of the Sea Wolves Pirates to rescue him. During that time, many pirates were killed, including the poisonous oracle. Su Yu sighed softly and said, "It's all fate." The Snow Swordsman was full of loneliness. It was rare for him to meet an old friend like Su Yu, so he felt more and more upset. Then, he chatted with Su Yu for a while. The stone sword stood in the distance, staring at Su Yu with fear, not daring to come over. "Snow Hall Master, we don't have much time left," the stone sword urged. The Snow Swordsman sighed at Su Yu, then cupped his fists and said, "Leader Su, let's talk again when there's a chance." He seemed to be in a hurry, as if he had something urgent to do. Chapter 2252. The swordsman in the snow didn't try to hide it. He said, "That's not it. Some of our people found some strange ruins nearby and wanted to go there to have a look." "Ruins? None of the ruins here were safe. Even the Path Masters could be buried here. With their cultivation, going there was no different from thinking." "Do you mind if I go with you?" Su Yu asked. The swordsman in the snow didn't know what to do. The ruins here were found by the Sea Wolves pirate. As the leader of another pirate, it wasn't appropriate for Su Yu to go with them. "I have to ask the deputy leader," the swordsman in the snow said. He immediately ran to the stone sword to report to him. After hesitating for a while, the stone sword nodded his head in agreement. According to the information from his subordinates, the ruins weren't very peaceful. If a strong man like Su Yu went with them, it would be much safer. Compared to the fact that he would get a share of the treasures, his strength played a more important role. After getting his consent, Su Yu went with them to the abyss below. At the bottom of the abyss there was a ruin. The ruin was deep and dark, and many powerful evil creatures were hiding there. In fact, from Su Yu's point of view, there weren't many valuable treasures in it, but many dangers. What caught his attention was that there was a dark cyan ball of light inside. The difference was that it was moving. Clear the danger. Be careful. The stone sword was very vigilant. Judging from the evil creatures that appeared, many of them were deadly to the half-path masters. Fortunately, they had a lot of people. Many of them were holding various kinds of magical treasures. They killed their way in and killed many evil creatures. Occasionally, some formidable beings at the half-step Downlord realm would appear, but the sword in the stone would personally annihilate them. Su Yu only attacked those that he couldn't kill. Several times, the evil creatures that almost destroyed the stone sword were killed by Su Yu easily. This made the stone sword feel lucky that he had made the right decision. Without Su Yu's help, they would all have died here. In the end, they completely cleared the evil creatures in the ruins and went their separate ways to look for treasures. Su Yu went straight to the moving treasure he had found. He was surprised to find that it was a tattered scroll that was revolving around the ruins. There was a calligraphy drawn on the scroll with the Path Master's blood. Su Yu did not pay much attention to it at first, but when he saw the words, he could not help but be slightly shocked. I've tried to enter an 8-star civilization 10 times, but I've always been rejected. This is my regret. The 8-star civilization regards us as desolate residents of the outer realm and set up the ancient absolute beginning formation to isolate us from the outside world. I'll use all my strength to make the 8-star civilization lower their heads and look at us, the desolate people of the outer realm, heavenly legacy. This calligraphy was left behind by the Sky Legacy Emperor. The content of the calligraphy was very long, but because it was incomplete it was disjointed, so he could only distinguish the above 3 sentences. However, these 3 sentences revealed a lot of thought-provoking content. Firstly, the rumored 8-star civilization did exist in the absolute beginning realm. Secondly, unlike any other civilizations that Su Yu had seen in the past, the 8-star civilizations could not enter at will. At least, even with the Tianyi Great Emperor's Hong Tian strength, he was refused entry by the 8-star civilizations. Su Yu's heart trembled for a long time. What kind of place was an 8-star civilization? What was the so-called ancient absolute beginning formation that isolated the desolate people of the outer realm? As he was pondering, the swordsman in the snow found Su Yu and found the calligraphy floating in the air. He said in surprise, "Is this calligraphy left by the Sky Legacy Emperor himself?" Surprised, he cast an envious look at Su Yu. "Leader Su, you're so lucky to have come across the relic of the Sky Legacy Emperor." Su Yu was enraged. He took a deep look at the calligraphy and said casually, "This thing is useless to me. If you want it, just take it." It was just a piece of calligraphy, which at most contained some of the meaning of the Sky Legacy Emperor. It might be of great use to other half-Daoist masters, but not to Su Yu. "This thing is so precious and it was found by Leader Su first. I can't take it," the swordsman in the snow refused. Su Yu said calmly, "If you don't want it, give it to the stone sword." "I want it." Upon hearing this, the swordsman in the snow immediately stepped forward and accepted the calligraphy. He thanked Su Yu profusely. "Thank you, Leader Su, thank you." "It's okay," Su Yu smiled lightly. The words, 8-star civilization, lingered in his mind for a long time. When they finished searching the ruins, everyone gathered again. The stone sword looked at Su Yu meaningfully and said to everyone, "Rest here. I've received news that the leader is on his way. A cold light flashed in the depths of Su Yu's eyes. He had been waiting for him for a long time. At that moment, the swordsman in the snow lowered his voice and said, "Leader Su, before the leader returns, why don't you leave first?" The conflict between Su Yu and the Sea Wolves pirates was well known. When the leader of the Sea Wolves returned and found Su Yu here, there would inevitably be a conflict. To be precise, Su Yu would be in danger. Without Xie Xiaoye's protection, who would know if the leader of the Sea Wolves killed Su Yu secretly? Leave? No need. I have something to discuss with the leader of the Sea Wolves, Su Yu said calmly. He was already thinking about how to kill the leader of the Sea Wolves as quietly as possible without arousing suspicion. The best way was to lure him to a remote place and kill him alone. Having made up his mind, Su Yu waited silently. Half a day later, the aura of the leader of the Sea Wolves appeared. "Welcome, leader." The stone sword and the others immediately stepped forward and bowed to the void. Whoosh, the leader of the Sea Wolves appeared. He casually glanced at everyone and was delighted to see that they were all safe and sound. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly saw an unusual person. While everyone else was bowing, another person was standing straight and looking at him coldly. It was difficult for him not to notice. When he saw the face clearly, the leader of the Sea Wolves unconsciously released a murderous aura. Su Rushu. Su Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest and slowly walked over. He said calmly, "You should call me Leader Su." Humph! The leader of the Sea Wolves snorted coldly, his eyes overflowing with coldness. "What are you doing among my pirates? Did Xie Xiaoye send you?" His questioning tone made it clear that he was looking for trouble. Su Yu said calmly, "You should thank me. Without me, they might not all be standing in front of you safe and sound." The leader of the Sea Wolves gradually narrowed his eyes. He had long wanted to get rid of Su Yu, the person who had humiliated him. Because of Xie Xiaoye, he did not dare to make a move. Now that he was in the Heavenly Legacy Cave, he still dared to come to his pirates alone. He was walking into a tiger's den and walking right into a trap. Of course, with so many people around, he did not dare to kill him in front of so many people. Otherwise, if Xie Xiaoye heard about it, she would definitely seek revenge. He suddenly smiled and said, "Then I'll have to thank you." From his words, it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Su Yu understood, and said indifferently, "You're welcome. Since Leader Su is here, that's perfect. With the three of us leaders attacking together, we should have a higher chance of success." Chapter 2253. Green Phoenix Leader, come down, the leader of the Sea Wolves called out to the void behind her. With a swoosh, a giant green phoenix descended from the sky and landed on the ground. Her body glowed, and her giant body gradually transformed into a graceful woman. It was the Green Phoenix Leader. Su Yu was slightly surprised, not by her appearance, but by her ability to fly. There were powerful seals in the air of the Heavenly Legacy Cavern. The higher the altitude, the stronger the seals, making it impossible for people to fly. Up until now, Su Yu had only flown at a height of 1,000 feet. For the Green Phoenix Leader to be able to fly at such a high altitude was probably a result of her talent. Perhaps even the masters of the family could not do it. After the Green Phoenix Leader appeared, she blinked and stared at Su Yu. "What a coincidence to meet you here, Leader Su." She had always had a good impression of Su Yu, so she immediately showed him goodwill. "The talent of the Green Phoenix Leader is truly enviable," Su Yu sighed. If he had her talent, the forest of 10,000 bones would not have been so difficult. "Haha, Leader Su is the most mysterious," the Green Phoenix Leader said. It was unclear if she was being polite or if there was a deeper meaning behind her words. Su Yu only smiled without saying anything. The leader of the Sea Wolves was displeased to see the two of them so familiar with each other. She interrupted their conversation. "We don't have much time, we should set off as soon as possible." The Green Phoenix Leader's smile faded and she said, time is indeed tight. Suyu said, since we are cooperating, can you tell me what you are going to do? Something that could make two pirate leaders join forces must not be simple. When I was high up in the sky, I found a group of people from the number 1 peerless family acting suspiciously. They seemed to be transporting something and were in a hurry to meet up with golden-eyed Langjun. Hearing this, Suyu's eyes flashed. At the mention of golden-eyed Langjun, Suyu felt uneasy. This person was too shrewd, and his schemes were too grand. It was not a good thing that his people were nearby. The leader of the sea wolves and I decided to rob them and find out what they were transporting, the Green Phoenix leader continued. They must have thought that the number 1 peerless family had discovered something incredible and wanted to rob them. Which direction? North. Suyu immediately agreed. Fine, count me in. Since it would not delay the journey, and he could even take the opportunity to attack the leader of the sea wolves, why not? Suyu was not interested in the things being transported by the number 1 peerless family. The one who was interested was the leader of the sea wolves. If he did not take his life, Suyu would feel uneasy. Then let's depart immediately. Hence, Suyu, the 3 leaders, and the subordinates of the leader of the sea wolves set off together. The leader of the Blue Phoenix sect was high up in the sky and could easily lock onto their location. Thus, tracking them was extremely easy. In just 2 days, not only had they caught up, but they had also circled ahead of them. Then, he set up an ambush in a stone forest that he had to pass by. After lying in ambush for a while, he saw a group of people moving forward mysteriously. Suyu recognized the Path Master leading the group. He was one of the elders of the number 1 peerless family, the Rock Path Master. Behind him were several foreign officials, most of whom Suyu knew. Suyu furrowed his brows slightly when he saw one of them. The guest was hidden by a special set of clothes. Although Suyu could not see his face clearly, he still gave Suyu a very uncomfortable feeling. Does the number 1 peerless family have such a foreign minister? Suyu muttered softly. Swish. The leader of the Blue Phoenix sect landed and said in a low voice, "Get ready." Suyu gathered his thoughts. When they arrived at the place where the ambush was, he and the 2 leaders dashed out. The pirates from all directions also charged out. The Rock Path Master sensed the strange movement and his face changed drastically. He shouted anxiously, "Enemy attack! Protect that thing!" Apart from the Rock Path Master and the few foreign officials, the rest of the people from the number 1 peerless family surrounded a beast carriage in the middle. Pirate Alliance, the Heavenly Legacy Cavern is filled with treasures. Why do you have to fight with us for these things? The Rock Path Master said angrily. If you have the time, why don't you go elsewhere to look for treasures? His words were reasonable. The Heavenly Legacy Cavern was filled with treasures. However, the best treasures would always be in the hands of the enemy. With such a mentality, the leader of the Blue Phoenix sect did not hesitate to rob them. Cut the crap. Put down the beast carriage and all the space storage devices on you. Otherwise, none of you will leave today. The leader of the Sea Wolves stared at the Rock Path Master like a venomous snake waiting for an opportunity to strike. The Rock Path Master looked at the leader of the Blue Phoenix sect and the leader of the Sea Wolves with a gloomy face. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "If the goods are here, the people are here. If the goods are gone, the people will die. Kill." All of a sudden, the 2 sides started fighting. The Rock Path Master faced the 2 pirate leaders alone, while the foreign ministers under his command fought with the pirates. The battle immediately reached its climax and was exceptionally intense. In the battle between the Pathmasters, the leader of the Blue Phoenix sect and the leader of the Sea Wolves had the upper hand. However, in the battle between the subordinates, the foreign ministers had a one-sided advantage. The foreign ministers of the number 1 peerless family were all at least half a step to the Pathmaster level. Among the pirates of the leader of the Sea Wolves, only a few were at least half a step to the Pathmaster level. Therefore, the pirates were at a disadvantage as soon as they started fighting. The swordsman in the snow was being attacked by the two foreign ministers. Seeing Su Yu standing at the side with his hands clasped behind his back, he said, "Leader Su, please help us." To avoid being recognized by the number one peerless family, Su Yu was in disguise. He nodded his head lightly and strode into the midst of the many foreign ministers. With his strength, even if he used the lower-tier heavenly dragon body slightly, he would still be able to crush them. Therefore, when he attacked, it was almost a one-sided suppression, like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep. In the short span of 10 breaths, all the foreign ministers had been injured by Su Yu. Only one foreign minister, Su Yu's heavenly dragon body, was able to withstand the attack. That foreign minister was the one who made Su Yu feel very uncomfortable. Interesting. Su Yu looked at him calmly. How could an ordinary foreign minister withstand the attack of a lower-tier heavenly dragon body? Even an ordinary path master might not be able to withstand it. Thinking about how even a powerful person like the Star Lady was willing to work for the golden-eyed Langjun, Su Yu felt that the foreign minister before him was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. "Which group of pirates are you from?" The foreign minister was also surprised by Su Yu's strength. It was obvious that the pirate leader had not used his full strength. Even so, he was extraordinarily powerful. "I'll tell you when you're down," Su Yu said calmly. As he took a step forward, the dragon scales on his body turned into a pure and holy golden color. It was the upper-tier heavenly dragon body. Even the Path Master, who was at the level of a family master, could not withstand it, let alone this foreign minister. "Retreat." However, right at that moment, the Rock Path Master, who was gradually losing his strength, clenched his teeth and announced a retreat. Many foreign ministers and the Rock Path Master immediately retreated. The Blue Phoenix leader and the Sea Wolves leader did not chase after them. They just symbolically drove them away before they all returned. The purpose of their trip was to plunder, not to kill people for no reason. The Blue Phoenix leader and the Sea Wolves leader surrounded the beast carriage, their eyes filled with greed. On the contrary, Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly as he slowly retreated. Chapter 2254. Whenever it involved the golden-eyed playboy, Su Yu would instinctively stay away. Just as Su Yu had retreated to a safe place, the beast carriage suddenly exploded from the inside out. 99 energy chains shot out from within, shooting wildly. The pirates, who thought they had successfully plundered the treasure, were caught off guard. The chains were very strange. Even the slightest contact would cause them to stick to them, entangling their souls tightly, unable to break free. The quickest among them were naturally the Blue Phoenix leader and the Sea Wolf leader. The former immediately transformed into a green phoenix, flying 30,000 miles in an instant. The latter transformed into the silhouette of a sea wolf, blocking in front of her. But the chains completely ignored the sea wolf leader's silhouette, piercing straight through the sea wolf leader's body. Perhaps it was because the higher one's cultivation level was, the more severe the damage caused by the chains. The sea wolf leader's soul hissed and emitted white smoke, as if it was suffering great torture. He could not help but let out a miserable howl. Although the Blue Phoenix leader was adept at flying, he could not escape. A chain extended infinitely, piercing through the Blue Phoenix leader, who had already flown to the depths of the sky. It pulled him down and smashed him to the ground. In a few breaths' time, all the pirates, including the two pirate leaders, had been captured by the chains. The chains contained a mysterious power that rendered them unable to exert any of their strength. They were like mortals. But the chains did not stop their attacks. There was still one person who had not been captured. That person was Su Yu. Because of his foresight, he had retreated far away in advance. So, when he noticed the abnormality, he immediately used the law of space to teleport elsewhere. However, he did not manage to break free from the chains. One of the chains followed him closely like a shadow, teleporting and shooting toward Su Yu's body. Su Yu swung his sword, but the powerful sword energy could not harm the chain in the slightest. What is this chain? Suyu was secretly surprised. He could not block it in time, and the chain shot into Suyu's body. All of a sudden, Suyu felt an obscure and disgusting thing invading his soul at lightning speed, trying to fuse with it. Meow. Suddenly, the life-gazing cat's yellow eyes opened. The thing that had invaded Suyu's soul quickly receded like a receding tide. The chain immediately withdrew from Suyu's body and returned quickly. Phew! Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had obtained one of the 6 great treasures of the Sky Legacy Emperor, the demonic soul stone, which could protect his soul. Otherwise, he would have been in danger. At the same time, Suyu was pondering what that chain was and why it was so powerful. I'm afraid that not even Patriarch-level Downlords would be able to resist these chains. Golden-eyed Playboy had hidden such a powerful magic weapon, but he had never revealed it in front of everyone. At this moment, he had caught 2 pirate leaders off guard. As expected, the Boulder Path Master and the others who had left earlier reappeared. Their faces were full of smiles as they scanned the motionless pirates. Among them, the strange-looking pirate sneered at the Boulder Path Master and said, as expected of the foolish pirate alliance, "They took the bait so easily." "How foolish," Dowlord Boulder said slowly. "Patriarch, you're a genius. You managed to capture so many members of the pirate alliance with such a simple trap." Just as they were feeling complacent, one of the pirates in charge of counting the number of people exclaimed, "We're still missing 1 pirate." They had secretly counted how many pirates had attacked them just now. Now they realized that they were missing 1 person. "Who are we missing?" Dowlord Boulder frowned. If news of what happened here got out, it would be difficult to deal with the other pirates. "Su-rushu," the guest beside him said with a gloomy face. He had suffered at Su-yu's hands before, so he was especially concerned about him. With a single glance, he realized that Su-rushu was missing. He actually managed to escape? Dowlord Boulder was deeply surprised. These chains were carefully prepared by the Patriarch. In the Pirate Alliance, only Xie Xiaoye might be able to escape. What's going on with this pirate leader Su? Although he was surprised, Dowlord Boulder immediately became vigilant and said, "Take them and leave immediately." Swish. As soon as they left, Suyu appeared in this place. As he looked at the backs of Dowlord Boulder and the others, his eyes shone with a profound light. Theoretically speaking, he would be happy to see the pirates being captured. However, what was Golden-Eyed Playboy's intention in setting up a trap to capture the Pirate Alliance? The group that appeared in front of Suyu was probably just one of the small groups. In other directions, there should be other elders leading the groups to capture the enemies. The targets of the capture might not just be the Pirate Alliance, but all the influences that coveted the number 1 peerless family. He was deeply fearful of Golden-Eyed Playboy. Now, he naturally wanted to take the opportunity to find out what he was up to. Suyu concealed his aura and followed the Dowlord Boulder and the others silently. After traveling a considerable distance, the other party stealthily arrived at a desert. In the desert, white bone dust fluttered all year round, covering the sky and obstructing one's vision. In an inconspicuous ruin in the desert, it was very peaceful, without the bone dust wreaking havoc. The ruin was filled with elders and guests from the number 1 peerless family. They kept rushing back from other places, more or less bringing people of unknown identities with them. Among them were people from the Pirate Alliance, as well as people from other families. All the captives, like the Blue Phoenix leader and the Sea Wolf leader, were suppressed by chains. The captives were brought to the ruin and immediately thrown into a giant cage to be locked up. In front of the cage, there was an ancient pool filled with fresh divine blood and the blood of the Path Masters. Fresh corpses were piled up into a small hill after their blood had been drained. In the pool, the waves were rolling rhythmically, as if something was beating continuously inside. What surprised Suyu was that the golden-eyed playboy, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, was standing in front of the blood pool. He was holding a pitch-black ancient book, softly chanting an incantation as he ordered, "Next batch." All of a sudden, a group of fierce-looking guests brought over 10 captives and made them kneel in front of the blood pool. As the golden-eyed playboy's incantation sounded, 10 bright red tentacles leaped out of the blood pool, piercing into the captives' bodies and devouring their divine blood. After a cup of tea's time, the 10 captives were left with shriveled skeletons. At this time, the waves in the blood pool were even more violent. The golden-eyed playboy closed the pitch-black ancient book and stared at the blood pool with a satisfied expression. Continue after an hour. Look after the captives. As soon as he finished speaking, he returned to the training room with a slightly pale face. It seemed that the mysterious incantation consumed a lot of his Path Master's strength. Suyu frowned when he saw this. Was the golden-eyed playboy summoning something? That pool of blood gave him an ominous feeling. Chapter 2255. Farewell, Patriarch. A few clan elders said respectfully. They each stood in a corner and guarded the captives closely. Among the captives, the pirate alliance was relatively quiet. They were mentally prepared for certain death if they fell into the hands of the 7 Absolute Alliance. However, the forces of the other aristocratic families were also captured. Among them was the white-robed sword god from the 3rd Peerless family. He said indignantly, "Golden-Eye Prince, your methods are cruel and your actions vicious, even more savage than the pirates." Pirates were savage, but they were not like Golden-Eye Prince, who captured people indiscriminately and extracted their blood essence. Of course, his roars and shouts were met with a beating. Only after he was covered in wounds did the 1st Peerless family stop and lightly say, "Behave, or the next batch will be yours." The white-robed sword god stubbornly wanted to say something. Beside him, New Dawn Flower Maiden quietly pulled on his sleeve and whispered, "Don't be rash. This won't help." Only then did the white-robed sword god calm down. He exchanged a glance with New Dawn Flower Maiden and laughed at himself. They had been implicated in the matter of King Greedwolf's capture because they had recommended young Master Wenshang. This time, they finally had a chance to come to the Heavenly Legacy cave abode to redeem themselves. Who would have thought that they would fall into the 1st Peerless family's trap? Including the 2 of them, many experts from the 3rd Peerless family had been captured and brought here. And they had personally witnessed such a bloody scene. "This is the will of the heavens," the white-robed sword god sighed. They had escaped death in the matter of King Greedwolf's capture, but in the Heavenly Legacy cave abode, they still could not avoid death. New Dawn Flower Maiden looked down at the giant iron cage and the Tao Lord experts guarding outside. Her heart was gloomy. This time, they really were at the end of the road. Bang! Suddenly, a loud sound rang out without warning. The huge cage that bound them twisted and broke apart, revealing a huge gap. A man wearing a conical bamboo hat and holding a pitch-black longsword slashed through the huge cage. New Dawn Flower Maiden was startled. This cage had been strengthened by the seals of several Tao Lords. Unless it was a Patriarch-level Tao Lord, ordinary Tao Lords could not do anything to the cage. This was also why they had been powerless to resist. However, the person in front of him had easily destroyed the cage. However, after a short moment of astonishment, she and the other trapped people immediately reacted and rushed out of the gap. The elders who were guarding outside the cage immediately reacted. They roared and rushed over to stop everyone from escaping. However, when Suyu swept his sword over them, he used his extraordinary swordsmanship to intimidate them so much that they dared not approach him. Soon, the captured snow swordsman and the other pirates also escape. He hurriedly said, "The leader of the Sea Wolves and the leader of the Blue Phoenix are locked in another cage." Suyu said calmly, "You take the people and escape first. Leave the matter of rescuing the 2 leaders to me." "Leader Su, be careful," the bladesman in the snow said. After they left, Suyu cast his gaze at the other cage. The cage was sealed from the outside to the inside, so even though there was a huge commotion outside, The people inside had no idea what was going on. Su Yu's eyes shone brightly as he dashed over. Before he arrived, his sword was already there. The elders who were in charge of guarding the cages stepped aside in fear, not daring to get close to him. Clang, with a sweep of the sword, the cage was blasted open. Two figures were revealed. They were the captured leader of the Blue Phoenix and the leader of the Sea Wolves. Their mental state was not good. Apart from the damage caused by the chains, the formation on the cage had a subtle restraining effect on them, causing their consciousness to blur. This was to prevent them from resisting on the spot when their blood essence was extracted, which would be detrimental to them. The leader of the Sea Wolves was fine, only slightly tired, but the leader of the Blue Phoenix had fallen into a deep coma. Realizing that the cage had been broken, the leader of the Sea Wolves was shocked at first. Then, realizing that it was Su Yu who had come to rescue them, he was delighted. He immediately stood up and said, "Leader Su, thank you." Su Yu did not say a word. He took a step forward and picked up the leader of the Blue Phoenix by the waist, then immediately rushed out. With such a huge commotion, he believed that the golden-eyed scholar would quickly react. The leader of the Sea Wolves followed Su Yu and rushed out. Unexpectedly, as soon as Su Yu left, he set up 10 space vortexes at the opening. Sensing Su Yu's intentions, the leader of the Sea Wolves stopped smiling and roared, "Little bastard! I knew you were also thinking of ways to kill me! Open!" With a loud roar, the giant shadow of a wolf materialized behind him and tore open several space vortexes. In a few breaths, the 10 space vortexes that Su Yu had set up were successfully torn open. As soon as he came out, he saw the back of Su Yu carrying the leader of the Blue Phoenix and escaping. But he had no time to give chase, because the elders around him had already surrounded him. "Su, this is not the end." The leader of the Sea Wolves was furious. As long as he could return alive, he would do everything in his power to kill Su Yu. The enmity between them had reached a point where it could not be salvaged. Even though the leader of the Sea Wolves had single-handedly caused all of this conflict, the leader of the Sea Wolves was still alive. Freeze! But even if he wanted to leave, Su Yu might not let him. Su Yu, who had already walked far away, activated the laws of time and space to freeze him in place. When 3 breaths had passed and the leader of the Sea Wolves was freed, he felt as if the world had jumped. Moreover, the elders who had been far away a moment ago had strangely appeared in front of him. It was not teleportation, but a loss of time and space. His heart thumped, as if he had missed a beat. It was as if he had stepped off a cliff and fallen into an abyss. A thick sense of hopelessness enveloped his heart. In his eyes, the domain released by the combined efforts of several elders was reflected. The next moment, the leader of the Sea Wolves let out a series of pitiful cries. He was on the verge of death. His eyes were still reflecting Su Yu's fleeing figure in the distance. Swish! At the same time, the golden-eyed playboy had finally been notified by the elders and appeared. Looking at the 2 destroyed cages, his expression suddenly became gloomy. "Who did this?" The Rock Path Master's heart trembled. "Master, it seems to be someone from the Pirate Alliance. His sword techniques are superb and extremely powerful." "How could he be more powerful than all of you?" the golden-eyed playboy rebuked. "How could the 5 elders not be able to stop one of the 10 great pirate leaders? Unless Xie Xiaoye came personally." The Rock Path Master was also in disbelief. "It's absolutely true. He could easily take our lives with just 1 sword technique, but he is not Xie Xiaoye. I heard the pirates call him Leader Su." The expression of the golden-eyed playboy changed for a long time. "Investigate. It is impossible for such a powerful leader to appear in the Pirate Alliance for no reason." When the leader of the Sea Wolves, who was on his last breath, heard this, a trace of hatred remained in his weak eyes. "He is Su Rushu." Chapter 2256. Him, the number 1 peerless family. No one would be unfamiliar with the name Su Rushu. In the eyes of the clan elders and guest chamberlains, Su Rushu was a murderer who had killed many outstanding disciples of the number 1 peerless family. She had already defected to the Pirate Alliance. Only golden-eyed Langjun knew that Su Rushu was a chess piece he had planted in the Pirate Alliance. But how could this chess piece possess such terrifying strength? Golden-eyed Langjun did not believe it. "Do you want to know more?" The Sea Wolf leader recovered a little and said, "I can help you eliminate this person." The pitiful leader of the Sea Wolves did not know Su Yu's true identity. As an outstanding chess piece, that golden-eyed Langjun had successfully infiltrated the Pirate Alliance. How could he allow anyone to threaten him? Golden-eyed Langjun smiled and said, "All right, I will remember this favor. If there is a next life, you can find me and ask for repayment." The leader of the Sea Wolves was slightly stunned. Before he could understand what was happening, he was kicked into the blood pool by the golden-eyed Langjun. Immediately, hundreds of tentacles extended from the blood pool. In the blink of an eye, the Sea Wolf leader was sucked clean, not even a speck was left. Golden-eyed Langjun said calmly, "Continue to capture people until the blood pool is completely filled." On the other side, Su Yu brought the leader of the Green Phoenix sect to a snowy plain in the north. The swordsman in the snow sent a message to him, telling him where they were hiding. The moment they landed, the Snow Blades man walked over with anticipation in his eyes. He looked at the unconscious Blue Phoenix leader and asked, "Where is our leader? Why is the leader of Blue Phoenix the only one here?" The pirates of the Sea Wolves pirates gathered around Zhang Xian worriedly. "I'm sorry, the enemies were too many and too strong. I only managed to save the Blue Phoenix leader in time. The leader of the Sea Wolves has already met with misfortune." Hearing this bad news, the many pirates of the Sea Wolves pirates immediately felt sad and uneasy. The Pirate Alliance was a place where all sorts of villains gathered. They only believed in the law of the jungle. It was almost foreseeable what would happen to this group of pirates after losing their pirate leader. He would definitely be eaten by someone without leaving any bones behind. The Bladesman in the snow was also at a loss for a long time. He sighed to himself. Fate really made a fool out of people. He had come all the way here to seek refuge with Dowlord Sea Wolf, but who would have thought that he would die tragically in such a short time? Where was he now? Suddenly, the snow swordsman looked at Su Yu, who was in front of him, and had an idea. He said, "Leader Su, are you short of people?" Of course it was lacking. Su Yu was now the leader of a group of pirates, but because he had been established in a hurry, he was the only leader and there were no pirates. What does Brother Shuizhong mean? Su Yu was a wise and far-sighted person, so he could immediately tell what he was thinking from the look in his eyes. However, he pretended not to know. The swordsman in the snow immediately knelt down on one knee and said, "We are willing to join Leader Su and obey Leader's orders." Many pirates who had lost their backbone followed suit. Not only was Su Yu's ability outstanding, but he was also strong enough to intimidate a few elders. Moreover, he had recently extorted a large amount of wealth from the 6th peerless family, which was rich in resources. Joining him was more advantageous than staying with the Sea Wolves pirates. Su Yu pretended to decline. "I was unable to save the leader of the Sea Wolves, and I am already at fault. If I accept you, it will inevitably attract criticism. I'm afraid this is not appropriate." How could the swordsman in the snow and the others allow Su Yu to decline? He immediately said, "Leader Su, you barged into the enemy's camp alone and dealt with the many strong men of the 1st peerless family. Not only did you save us, but you also saved the leader of the Blue Phoenix pirates. You have done us a great service, so how can you say that you are at fault? Yes, Leader Su, you are our savior. We are willing to follow you from now on. What can outsiders say? Yes, Leader Su is righteous and benevolent. If anyone dares to criticize him, we will fight them to the death." Su Yu had no choice but to say, "All right, since everyone says so, you can join my pirates from now on. I will take care of you on behalf of the leader of the Sea Wolves. In fact, Suyu had long planned to establish his own pirate group. He did not want to be Xie Xiaoye's puppet, although Xie Xiaoye might not dare to do anything to him. But some things were better handled by his own people. Leader, what should we do with them? The swordsman in the snow pointed to a group of people huddled in a corner. They were the Flower Lady of the First Dawn and the white-robed sword god from the Third Peerless family. When they were fleeing, they were in a panic and fled with the Pirate Alliance. Only when they were safe did they realize that they had been surrounded by a large group of pirates. Suyu thought for a moment, then looked at the Flower Lady of the First Dawn and the white-robed sword god. How were you captured? The Flower Lady of the First Dawn looked at Suyu cautiously and said, When we were exploring a heart-shaped lake, we were captured by the men of the golden-eyed Langjun. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was interested. A heart-shaped lake. One of the 6 great areas recorded in Dance's handbook was a heart-shaped lake. One of the 6 great treasures of the great Emperor of Tianyi was buried there. What did you find? Suyu asked. The Flower Lady of the First Dawn said bitterly, When we arrived, the number 1 peerless family had already searched the place. Suyu was disappointed. It seemed like the golden-eyed Langjun had already obtained what was inside. Otherwise, he would still be searching there, not setting up a blood pool here. Suyu's heart skipped a beat when he heard the blood pool. Could it be that the blood pool was one of the 6 great treasures that the golden-eyed Langjun had obtained? According to Dance's handbook, it was a great treasure called Eternal Life, which could bring people back to life. Who does the golden-eyed Langjun want to revive? Suyu murmured softly. However, if that was the case, there was no need to go to the place where the treasures were buried in the central region. They could go straight north to the area of the Broken Love platform. Looking at the Flower Lady of the First Dawn and the others, Suyu said, Let's go. The swordsman in the snow froze for a moment, then said, We're letting them go just like that? According to the pirates' way of doing things, the women had to be kept alive, and the men had to be searched. If they were more ruthless, they would all be killed. Letting them go just like that was not the style of the pirate. A meaningless massacre will only invite the other great families to join forces to suppress us. The gains do not make up for the losses, Suyu said calmly. Although he had formed a pirate group, he did not want to form a group of pirates that committed all sorts of evil deed. The Flower Lady of the First Dawn and the others were extremely grateful, and they all bowed to Suyu. We will remember this kindness, and we will definitely repay it in the future. Suyu had never hoped that the Flower Lady of the First Dawn would really repay him one day. He waved his hand and led the group of people to the northernmost area. Not long after he left, the Green Phoenix leader, who had traveled with him, finally regained consciousness. She rubbed the space between her brows and looked around in confusion. She murmured, Am I saved? It was Leader Su who saved you. A female pirate who had been taking care of her said with a smile. Next, she told the Green Phoenix leader everything that had happened. After hearing it, the Green Phoenix leader was extremely grateful. Without Suyu, she would have died without a doubt. By the way, where are we going now? The northernmost area. The leader said so. What? The Green Phoenix leader struggled to stand up and said, Quick, help me to see Leader Su. We cannot go to the northernmost area. She seemed to know something. Chapter 2257. Her father really knelt on the ground like a horse, and carried the statue around the fountain. The statue kept its promise, and with a swipe of its finger, a crack appeared in front of the army destroyer Monarch. Emperor defeating army didn't stop for even a moment. He wanted nothing more than to disappear from this world. He leaped into the crack with extreme discomfort. Who's next? The stone statue teased. Many Dao masters hesitated when they heard that. I'll do it. On the Pirate Alliance's side, the leader of the Sea Wolves stepped forward after a fierce internal struggle. He had no choice but to risk it. Among the top 10 pirates, he was currently in the worst situation. Not only did he suffer a great loss of strength, but his reputation had also been ruined recently, and he had become the laughing-stock of all the pirates. He urgently needed to make a comeback and change himself. The Heavenly Legacy cave abode was his only chance. Moreover, the most embarrassing request had already been used on the army destroyer Emperor, right? He didn't have to feel embarrassed to receive such a request. You, right? The statue sized him up and said, "Just now, when you were chasing me, who shot me with an arrow? Help me lick my wound clean, and I'll be happy." The leader of the sea wolves heaved a sigh of relief. Although it was still very humiliating, it was still better than Emperor defeating armies being ridden like a horse, right? He sternly asked, "Excuse me, where is your wound?" The statue turned around and aimed its butt at the leader of the sea wolves. "There. It's up there." With one look, the sea wolf leader's face turned green. It was actually a ***. At this moment, he hated the archer to the bone. Who the hell could shoot so accurately? In the crowd, Suyu sneezed. The person who shot the arrow was none other than Suyu. Using the sky bow, he shot an arrow at the twisting rear of the statue. Who would have thought that the arrow would hit the center? "Hey! I've been sticking up for a long time. Are you going to lick me or not?" The stone statue turned its head in dissatisfaction. The sea wolf leader's face was ashen. He hesitated for a while before he moved his mouth closer with the determination of a warrior who would never return. However, just as he was about to kiss her, the sea wolf leader retracted his mouth. Then, he gritted his teeth and moved forward again. After a few moments of consideration and hesitation, he finally flicked his sleeves and left. "You should find someone else." With that, he left with a face full of anger. In the end, he still couldn't bring himself to do it. The stone statue was so angry that it glared at him. "What a waste of my time and energy! Next, hurry up!" Everyone looked at each other with anger written all over their faces. Damn it, who could bear to eat it? Whoever inhaled it in public would not be able to survive in a 7-star civilization for the rest of their lives. The stone statues were so disgusting that they could drive people crazy. After waiting for a while and seeing that there was no one, the stone statue retracted its buttocks and said with a scowl, "You people, why don't you know how to cherish the weak? I'm injured, but you're dawdling when I ask you to heal me. You call that healing?" To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that the stone statue controlled everyone's access to the Heavenly Legacy cave abode, he would have been beaten to death. "Forget it, let's change the conditions. Whoever calls me Grandpa first can enter." As soon as he finished speaking, several people in the crowd immediately called him Grandpa. "Hey! My obedient grandchildren." The stone statue grinned and said, "Come here, you shout the fastest and loudest." He pointed a finger in front of one of them and let him pass through the crack. Following that, the stone statue made one extremely embarrassing request after another. For example, help him bathe, help him cut his nose hair, help him wash his feet, and so on. Everyone pinched their noses and completed the requests with difficulty. Then, they were transported into the Heavenly Legacy cave abode one by one. Finally, it was the Pirate Alliance's turn. The stone statue sneered and looked at Xiaoya, who had chased him, and said, "Take off your clothes and I'll let you pass." Xiaoya had already expected that the stone statue would not let her off easily. As expected, asking her to take off her clothes in public was something she could never do. She would not give up her dignity for wealth. "Dream on." Xiaoya snorted and stood at the side with a cold expression. "You don't agree? Fine, none of you will be able to enter," the stone statue shouted fearlessly. The expressions of the Blue Phoenix leader and the others changed slightly. They were actually implicated. Xiaoya frowned and said with anger, "Don't go too far." The stone statue crossed his legs unconcernedly and said calmly, "I've changed my mind now. I need all of you to take off your clothes before I can let you in together." The male leader was fine, but what was so strange about a man revealing his body? The women inside were in a difficult position, such as Xie Xiaoye and the Blue Phoenix, as well as some of the female deputy leaders. Almost everyone had taken off their clothes. Only the female pirate bit her lips, not daring to take off her clothes. Su Yu was also not taking off his clothes. "Why aren't you taking off your clothes?" As the stone statue scanned the crowd, it unexpectedly found a man who was also not taking off his clothes. "Young man, you're the only one left," the stone statue said calmly. Su Yu smiled. "If you've had enough fun, then stop wasting everyone's time." Hearing this, the stone statue relaxed its shoulders and smiled. "Young man, you don't seem to understand the situation." Su Yu did not say a word as he slowly walked toward the stone statue. The stone statue's eyelids twitched slightly. "Young man, if I die, no one can enter the Heavenly Legacy cave abode." Su Yu smiled disapprovingly, revealing his murderous intent. The stone statue said hurriedly, "Are you joking? I control the key to the Heavenly Legacy cave abode. You can't do anything to me." But Su Yu's eyes were as sharp as arrows, penetrating the stone statue's heart. "Control? Who said that?" Su Yu's eyes were filled with a cold light. "The Heavenly Legacy Great Emperor wanted you to open the seal when someone came, not to tolerate you playing tricks on others." A trace of panic flashed through the stone statue's eyes, and it stuttered, "Who are you?" The Heavenly Legacy Great Emperor had arranged for him to welcome the people who came to the cave abode. But only he, the Heavenly Legacy Great Emperor, and a few of his enemies' trusted aides knew about this. How did the silver-haired human before him know? "Who I am is not important. What's important is that you let us in immediately," Su Yu said calmly. The stone statue stared at Su Yu deeply. After a moment of uncertainty, it said in a low voice, "Unfortunately, the Heavenly Legacy Great Emperor has already fallen. His orders are no longer effective." There was naturally a reason why he dared to be so insolent. The Heavenly Legacy Great Emperor was no longer in the mortal world, and that was one of the reasons. He stared at Su Yu, his face full of mockery. "All of you can enter the Heavenly Legacy cave abode unconditionally. Only this human, unless you lick my body clean, you can stay outside." The stone statue was furious that Su Yu had exposed him. The rest of the pirates were overjoyed. One by one, they entered through the crack that had appeared in front of them. Before Xie Xiaoye left, she exhorted, "It's fine if you can't enter. We still have so many people here. We don't need you. Don't make things difficult for yourself." Whoosh, seeing that everyone had left and only Su Yu was left, the stone statue said sarcastically, "There's no one here now. You can lick my body all you want." Unexpectedly, Su Yu was not angry. Instead, he looked relaxed. Clenching his fists together, he said to himself, "It's finally quiet. I can attack without any qualms." Chapter 2258. "It looks like we're not fated with this place," the Blue Phoenix leader said dejectedly. The cold air in this place was still fresh in her memory. Xie Xiaoye shook her head lightly. "Not necessarily." The leader of the Blue Phoenix sect asked in surprise, "Why do you say that? With how terrifying the Forbidden Death Zone was, could it be that there was someone who could force their way through it?" "Xia Yan has an artifact inherited from the Sky Legacy Emperor. Once activated, it can open up a passage in the Forbidden Death Zone," said Xie Xiaoye. The Blue Phoenix leader frowned slightly. "Is Xia Yi and that muddle-headed? After opening the passage, wouldn't it benefit others? That Dharma treasure is too powerful. Xia Yan alone can't activate it. Someone needs to activate it together." Xie Xiaoye's eyes flashed. How powerful was Xia Yan? He couldn't even activate that magic treasure alone. However, it was precisely because of this that the magic treasure was able to open up a passageway in the terrifying Forbidden Death Zone. Who among us can match Xia Yan's strength? "I don't think so," the Blue Phoenix leader said doubtfully. With Xia Yan's transcendent status, There was no one in the entire 7 ultimate civilizations who could rival him. It would not be easy to activate that magic treasure. Of course not, Xie Xiaoye said, but unfortunately, an expert from the Starfire civilization came. The purple flame demoness. Her strength is comparable to Xiaoyan. When Su Yu, who was at the side, heard this, he was slightly surprised. The Starfire civilization was a powerful 7-star civilization. Their strength was no less than when the Heavenly Legacy civilization was at its most glorious. The Starfire civilization had 4 extremely powerful rulers, known as the Starfire 4 Devils. Each of the 4 devils was an old monster that had lived for more than half an era. In fact, the first demon was from the same era as the Sky Legacy Great Emperor. His strength was no weaker than the Sky Legacy Emperor. The purple flame demoness was one of them. She was only born a long time after the Sky Legacy Emperor had fallen. Through her continuous efforts, she eventually became the weakest of the 4 demons. However, his strength made everyone gasp in admiration. It was said that she had once single-handedly conquered the lords of civilization of dozens of 7-star civilizations without losing a single battle. In terms of battle achievements, even Xia Yi could not compare. How could Su Yu not know about such a famous strong martial artist? At this moment, Xie Xiaoye continued, someone has already sent a message that the purple flame demoness has appeared in the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode and is heading in our direction. If her target is also the last treasure ground, she will cooperate with Xia Yan to open a passage together. The passageway would open, but it was unknown how many people would be allowed in. Su Yu's heart sank. Others might be able to enter, but it was impossible for him to be allowed to enter, right? Putting aside the fact that his previous hostage-taking operation had caused the 7 ultimate civilizations to lose face, just Xia Rukin's killing intent towards him alone would not allow him to enter. Furthermore, the more people that entered, the harder it would be to obtain the heavenly throne of the heavens and earth. It seemed like he had to go in alone as soon as possible. Leader Xiaoye, Leader Qing Huang, I will look around, Su Yu said. Xie Xiaoye knew that Su Yu had not given up and was determined to get to the bottom of this. She nodded and said, be careful. Many people, like Su Yu, had come here hoping to get lucky. It was the same for Xie Xiaoye, so she did not notice Su Yu's abnormality. Su Yu circled around the forbidden death zone until he reached an angle with the least number of people. After confirming that there was no one around, he immediately weaved signs with his hands and muttered a very strange language. It was a simple spell to control the fairy frost moths, recorded in Pianxian's handwriting. As expected, as soon as the spell was recited, the fairy frost moths left and opened up a passageway that was only wide enough for one person. Su Yu's figure flashed lightly, and he leaped into the passageway. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly heard a soft sigh. Mr. Su, you are really extraordinary. You do extraordinary things. Who is it? Su Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he turned around abruptly. He found that it was Byun Hongchen who had appeared behind him abruptly, staring at Su Yu quietly. Su Yu was surprised. When he opened the passageway, he had confirmed that there was no one nearby. How could Byun Hongchen avoid his detection? Thinking that she was the daughter of the golden-eyed Langjun, Su Yu did not find it strange. The star lady recruited by the golden-eyed Langjun had hidden herself so well. Was it strange that the Linchin Red Fairy had concealed herself as well? She must have cultivated some kind of concealment technique that could easily avoid detection. So, it's you. Su Yu's eyes flickered. The passageway had been discovered by the Linchin Red Fairy. How should he deal with her? Should he silence her, or, I followed you to this remote place to talk about something important. I didn't expect to ruin your plan, the Linchin Red Fairy said apologetically. I can enter with you. She dispelled Su Yu's worries with her actions. Su Yu thought that this woman was calm and composed. He nodded and said, Don't make any noise. I will listen to your instructions, Mr. Su. The Lynchen Red Fairy followed Su Yu through the passageway and entered the forbidden death zone. Then, she quietly groped her way toward the snowy mountain. At that moment, outside the forbidden death zone, in the depths of the sky, a fireball was approaching rapidly like a falling sun. Even before it reached them, it had already created a terrifyingly high temperature that forced the half-path masters to flee. If they didn't flee now, they would be completely melted by the strange high temperature when the fireball arrived. The remaining Dao masters wore expressions of deep fear and respect as they stared unblinkingly at the giant fireball descending upon them. Puff! The fireball crashed onto the ground, and sparks flew everywhere. The three figures were especially clear against the sparks. They were the purple flame demoness, Zhan Wushuang, and the depressed Star Lady. Oh, it's quite lively here. The purple flame demoness swayed her hips as she walked over. She didn't look at anyone else but Xia Yan, sizing him up. It's rumored that there is a descendant of the great emperor of Tianyi in the 7 ultimate civilizations who inherited his bloodline. It seems like you're the one. Xia Yan stood with his arms crossed and calmly said, "Why do you think I am?" The purple flame demoness covered her mouth and chuckled. Who else but you could have such a similar appearance to the great emperor of Tianyi? It turned out that Xia Yan and the great emperor of Tianyi looked similar. If Su Yu were here, he might understand why Xia Yan looked so familiar to him. Xia Yan revealed a faint smile. I am indeed Xia Yan, and I've been waiting for you for a long time. The purple flame demoness glanced at the forbidden death zone and smiled. Frost fairy moth? It seems like we've come to the right place. The other places with treasures were not guarded by powerful creatures. This place was the only exception. Are you waiting for me because you want to join forces with me to expel the frost fairy moths? The purple flame demoness was slightly fearful of the frost fairy moths. It would be difficult for her to force her way through with such a large number of fairies. Yes, I have a treasure. If you and I activate it together, we can open up a passageway leading inside. It can last for about 10 days. The purple flame demoness rolled her eyes. Do we need you and me to maintain it for 10 days? Yes. Hearing that, many people's faces lit up with joy. This meant that the two of them could only maintain the treasure outside and could not enter to compete with them. Chapter 2259. How about it? Do you agree? Xia Yan asked the purple flame demonic woman. Sure. The purple flame demonic woman did not think for long. Her lips curled into a smile. But I will only allow 2 people to enter, and you can only send the same number of people. Xia Yan looked at Zhan Wushuang and the Star Lady and said, Okay. He looked behind him and said, Father Rukan, you 2 go in. 4 people were allowed to enter. The others could only watch from the outside. Xuemeng Feiyu of the 6th Peerless family looked helpless. She had thought that obtaining the Tianyi Great Emperor's technique meant that she was fated to inherit the Tianyi Great Emperor's legacy. Who would have thought that she would not get anything from the moment she came to the Tianyi Cavern? This made Xuemeng Feiyu, who had always been proud of her great fortune, feel very defeated. Miezhing sighed deeply. With Xia Yan and the purple flame demonic woman present, they would not be able to enter. The snow mountain was so well protected that it was definitely not an ordinary object. It was even more important than the other 5 great treasures. However, it did not belong to them. Suddenly, Miezhing looked in the direction of the Pirate Alliance and raised his eyebrows. Where is Su Rishu? She was here just now, but now she was nowhere to be seen. Xuemeng Feiyu could not be bothered to look at him. She said, Who cares? Maybe he didn't get anything along the way and is looking for the treasure that everyone missed. Miezhing shook his head slightly. In his eyes, Su Yu was a smart person. Moreover, he had obtained the Greedy Wolf King's Lucky Path Pearl. His luck was definitely not bad. Now that he was nowhere to be seen, Miezhing could not help but speculate. I hope he has gained something. After the Tianyi Cavern ends, I have a favor to ask of him. The more he gains, the more confident he will be, Miezhing murmured softly. The people from the other families and forces were all unwilling to accept this. Unsurprisingly, they were all forbidden from entering. Xie Xiaoye frowned deeply. She hated herself for being so weak that she could not compete with them. She could only watch helplessly as the most powerful treasure in the Tiani cavern was right in front of her eyes. Pajuan Emperor was like that, and Greedy Wolf King was even more so. The latter clenched his fists tightly, his chest full of resentment. If I had the lucky path pearl, I wouldn't have to face this. In the past, he could rely on the Providence Dao Pearl to pick up treasures from ordinary places where there were no treasures. Now, in the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode, which was filled with treasures, he had not seen a single thing that caught his eye. Strength, my strength is still too low. Greedy Wolf King clenched his fist. Xia Yi and the purple flame demoness control over the sixth great treasure greatly motivated the surrounding martial artists to become stronger. However, at this moment they could only watch. At this moment, Xia Yi took out a cone-like magic treasure that was only the size of a palm. After blowing a mouthful of air on it, the cone rapidly expanded, becoming 10 feet tall and 100 feet long. Let's begin, Xia Yan said indifferently, imbuing thick Daelord's power inside. The cone suddenly spun on its own, and the sharp end kept extending forward. The frost immortal moths were crushed the moment they touched the spinning cone. They couldn't do any damage to the inside of the cone. Let's go in, said Xia Yan. Xia Donglai, Xia Rukan, Zhan Wushuang, and Star Maiden immediately stepped into the Forbidden Death Zone. At the same time, after a long journey through the Forbidden Death Zone, Su Yu and Bai Yun Hongxian finally arrived at the foot of the snowy mountain. The snowy mountain seemed to have a strange deterrent force. The rampaging frost immortal moths didn't dare to come any closer. Phew! Bai Yun Hongxian heaved a sigh of relief. She seemed calm along the way, but she was actually quite scared. She looked up at the back of the figure in front of her and thought to herself, what a strange man. Every time they met, he would do something that surprised her. Even Xia Yi didn't dare to trespass on the snowy mountain, but Su Yu was able to enter it as if no one was there. What do you want to say to me? Su Yu turned his head and met her snow-white eyes. Bai Yun Hongxian avoided his gaze. She hadn't forgotten why she had followed Su Yu to this remote place. She said, "It's nothing. I just want to convey my father's words." It had finally come. The golden-eyed Langjun had made Su Yu a spy in the Pirate Alliance, hoping that he could influence the Pirate Alliance's decision. Speak, Su Yu said. He now had some influence in the Pirate Alliance. Bai Yun Hongxian said, "My father hopes that you can mobilize the Pirate Alliance to steal something." What? The divine throne of heaven and earth. Su Yu's heart sank. The golden-eyed Longjuan's goal was indeed this thing. His mind was racing, and after a moment of silence, he slowly nodded. I'll find a way to convince them. He could have imitated the Emperor Killer Sword and used it up before giving it away. Why aren't you surprised at all? Bai Yun Hongxian asked suspiciously. Or, did you already predict my father's intentions? Su Yu said calmly, don't you think you're asking too much? Bai Yun Hongxian realized that she had probed too deeply into Su Yu's background. She hurriedly said, I'm sorry. Su Yu nodded slowly and stepped onto the snowy mountain. As soon as he stepped on it, he felt a bone-chilling coldness. Even with his current physique, he could still feel the bone-chilling coldness of the snowy mountain. If an ordinary path master were to step on it, he would probably be frozen to death immediately. He looked back at Bai Yun Hongxian, and was slightly surprised to find that she was standing on the snowy mountain unscathed. She even smiled at him. Is there a problem? No, Su Yu said calmly. She was able to follow him without a sound, and she could even ignore the cold ice. The golden-eyed Longjuan's daughter was really extraordinary. The two of them continued up. The higher they went, the more shocking the coldness under their feet became. He tried to fly, but found that as soon as he released his power, he was immediately frozen. Even the law of space was frozen by the shocking cold, making it impossible for him to teleport. He had no choice but to go up one step at a time. When he was about 100 steps away from the snowy mountain, Suyu had already activated the upper-tier dragon body. Even so, he was shivering from the cold, and it was difficult for him to move. Bai Yun Hongxian, who had been walking on flat ground before, also hugged her body with her arms, having reached her limit. The remaining 100 steps seemed close at hand, but in fact it was unreachable. Su Rushu, let's give up. If the mountainside is like this, then the coldness at the top of the mountain must be unimaginably strong. If we go up, we'll definitely die. Bai Yun Hongxian's face was pale from the cold, and she was trembling. Give up? Did he have the strength to give up? To cultivate the 8 great laws at the same time, to turn them all into the domain in a short period of time, apart from the divine throne of heaven and earth, what other shortcut could there be? I don't want to give up until the last moment. Suyu clenched his teeth and took another step forward. He wanted strength, absolute strength. If he had absolute strength, how could Qin Xian'er's memory have been taken away by the heavenly law? If he had absolute strength, why would Yun Yazi need to block the fatal sword for Suyu? Charge! Suyu's heart was as firm as iron. His body, which had been frozen stiff, suddenly had the strength to rush up dozens of steps. Moreover, he did not stop. Bai Yun Hongxian, who was behind him, was shocked. Suyu had just taken dozens of quick steps, and each step left a glaring bloody footprint on the ground. The coldness here was too shocking. If one's feet stopped for even a moment, they would immediately be frozen together with the snowy mountain under their feet. Under normal circumstances, by using the power of desolation to dissolve the coldness at the soles of the feet, one could take a step forward with difficulty. However, Suyu directly abandoned the skin and flesh at the soles of his feet and forcibly climbed up. Therefore, with every step he took, a layer of flesh was torn off. Then, midway, he used his strong vitality to restore his body. This repeated over and over again. His body seemed fine, but the pain came again, and it was excruciating. Her eyes flickered with shock, and she suddenly felt that Suyu's figure was extraordinarily tall. What kind of determination made him want to obtain the divine throne of heaven and earth at all costs? Was it because of her father's order? Obviously not. She silently watched Suyu as he stepped up to the peak of the snowy mountain. Along the way, he left a glaring trail of red. Standing at the peak of the snowy mountain, Suyu completely forgot the pain in his feet. He looked at the object in front of him, and his heart was slightly excited. At the peak of the snowy mountain, a throne covered in ice, which had stood there for a short period of time, was reflected in his eyes. The throne was exquisitely carved, and the sun, moon, and stars were suspended around it. On the left side of the armrest was a dragon, and on the right side was a phoenix. The back of the armrest was formed by a hazy brilliance that looked like a galaxy. At first glance, it was as magnificent as a dream. At the same time, a threatening aura of an emperor rushed towards him. The divine throne of heaven and earth. We have finally met. Suyu walked forward with difficulty. With just one step, half of his body was completely frozen, rendering him unable to move. Break! Suyu's remaining right side of his body shook violently, abandoning the frozen half of his body. In an instant, blood was dripping, sprinkling across the snowy sky. However, it was immediately frozen again. With only half of his body left, Suyu's eyes were terrifyingly firm. Life law. The left side of his body was immediately restored. However, the right side of his body was frozen again. Without hesitation, Suyu struggled with the left side of his body, abandoning the right side. He repeatedly endured the extreme pain of his body being torn apart again and again as he walked step by step towards the divine throne of heaven and earth. The closer he got to the throne, the stronger the chill. When he reached the throne, His whole body was frozen from the inside out by the chill. Suyu bent his knees with difficulty and slowly sat down. However, as soon as he touched the divine throne of heaven and earth, an extremely angry will of resistance came from the throne. Just like the Emperor Killer Sword, it had its own spiritual intelligence and would choose a suitable master for itself. If others forcibly occupied it, there would only be one result: death. Boom! A destructive force rushed out from the throne, instantly turning Suyu into ice shards. Resurrection! Suyu's voice came from the ice shards. The fragments gathered again and became Suyu. When have I, Suyu, ever admitted defeat in my life? Suyu sat down again. As long as he wanted to sit on something, even if it was the heavenly law, he would sit on it. Boom! A contemptuous will came from the divine throne of heaven and earth, and another wave of destructive force rushed out. Undying domain! He activated the power of the divine nine-dragon cauldron, forming an immortal domain with himself as the center. Within the time it took to drink a cup of tea, no harm could kill him. Bang! The power of the divine throne of heaven and earth was a destructive force that could kill all path masters below the Tianyi Great Emperor. Suyu's body could not withstand even the slightest impact and vanished on the spot. However, under the undying domain, his body was restored. Chapter 2260. Even though Suyu had experienced countless painful tempering, he could not help but let out a miserable groan. His reformed body could not help but tremble slightly. I can't admit defeat. The scene of Xian Er's memories being stolen and the sorrow of Yun Yazi blocking the sword for her replayed in her mind. She gritted her teeth, endured the pain, and leaned against the magnificent starry river on the back. Suddenly, thousands of lights flashed in Suyu's mind at the same time, piercing the chaos in his mind. Many things that he was confused about were instantly understood. His space law emerged involuntarily, and a small wine-red dragon excitedly circled around Suyu's body. In just a short moment, Suyu seemed to understand the difficulties that he had not understood for decades. A virtual image of a scene shrouded the wine-red dragon. This was a sign that the space domain was beginning to take shape. The rumors of the divine throne of heaven and earth were true. However, good times did not last long. Suyu's absorption of the divine throne of heaven and earth seemed to have angered the consciousness of the divine throne of heaven and earth. A destructive force that was twice as powerful as the previous one instantly destroyed Suyu again. However, relying on the immortal domain, Suyu reformed his body. Endless pain lingered in his soul, making it impossible for him to be distracted by comprehension. However, with extremely firm faith, Suyu suppressed the pain and divided 1/10 of his consciousness to continue to absorb the comprehension of the divine throne of heaven and earth. Boom! In exchange, the divine throne of heaven and earth became even more furious. Once, twice, thrice, Suyu had forgotten how many times he had died. Each time, before the pain had dissipated, the pain of being smashed into pieces struck him again. In the eternal pain, Suyu held on for a cup of tea's time. At the moment when the death domain dissipated, the divine throne of heaven and earth once again rushed out with 10 times the original destructive force. One could feel the anger of the divine throne of heaven and earth. However, Suyu's domain of the space law was at the final moment. In another half a cup of tea's time, he should be able to succeed. If he gave up now, he would fail on the verge of success. Destiny, appear. At the critical moment, Suyu shouted, and a cloud of destiny appeared above his head. That cloud of air vaguely had the shadow of the divine throne of heaven and earth. This was the Emperor's 4-piece set of destiny that the divine Emperor of heaven and earth had given to Suyu at the request of Yun Yazi. Although he couldn't conquer the Emperor's 4-piece set, he could more or less have some luck with it. Sure enough, after this ball of providence appeared, the consciousness of the heavenly God of heaven and earth seemed to fall into a daze and stopped attacking. Su Yu, on the other hand, seized the precious opportunity to absorb and comprehend it crazily. He only left a portion of his consciousness to guard against the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth. The remaining 90% of his consciousness was immersed in comprehension. In this way, the speed of a domain esper was greatly accelerated. But as time passed, the consciousness of the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth seemed to gradually realize that the providence was not the providence that had conquered him. The great divine throne of heaven and earth trembled violently before it erupted with an extremely terrifying power of destruction. At this moment, Su Yu had successfully turned the law of space into a domain. Space domain. With Su Yu as the center, the space within 100 feet radius suddenly distorted. It was like a reflection in the water, blown by the wind. The power of destruction that erupted from the great divine throne of heaven and earth was distorted as it brushed past Su Yu. Seizing the opportunity, Su Yu leaped away to avoid the fatal blow. The initial formation of the space domain was indeed astonishing. Ordinary attacks might not be able to do anything to him. The only drawback was that the great divine throne of heaven and earth did not recognize him, and he could not continue to turn the other 7 laws into the domain. "I'll bring you back and slowly use it," Su Yu snorted softly. At worst, he would just have to work harder and use the death domain once a day to forcibly absorb the insights of the great divine throne of heaven and earth. No matter what, he had to turn all the laws into the domain. As if sensing danger, the great divine throne of heaven and earth suddenly trembled, shaking off the ice all over its body, and then flew towards the foot of the snowy mountain. Su Yu tapped his toes, ignoring the cold that invaded his body, and immediately chased after it. When he reached the edge of the mountain, the great divine throne of heaven and earth had already flown to the mountainside. Watching it fly further and further away, Su Yu grabbed at the 9-jade spiritual pearl and grabbed a handful of world destruction dust. Each grain of world destruction dust had a terrifying weight that could crush a 5-star civilization, let alone a handful. With a wave of his palm, the sand fell on the great divine throne of heaven and earth. Boom! The great divine throne of heaven and earth was suddenly suppressed by an endless weight, and fell on the mountainside with a loud bang. How could the snowy mountain withstand a whole handful of world destruction dust? With a loud bang, the snowy mountain, which had existed for half a century, completely collapsed with a loud bang. Bai Yun, who was on the mountainside, was shocked and quickly fled down the mountain. At the moment when the snowy mountain collapsed, she escaped to the foot of the mountain. Looking at the white snow flying all over the sky, the splashing ice, and the collapsed snowy mountain, Bai Yun and Hongxian were inexplicably shocked. What happened up there had caused the entire snowy mountain to collapse. Suddenly, her pupils shrank as she found an extremely distorted figure jumping back and forth in the ruins, and finally stopped in front of a ruin. The figure kicked away a large piece of the ruins, revealing an exquisite throne. At this moment, the whole body of the throne was constantly trembling, as if it could not bear the weight. 100 grains of world destruction dust were pressing down on it, so of course it was uncomfortable. However, Su Yu could feel that the great divine throne of heaven and earth did not surrender, and its consciousness was still full of anger. Boom! To Su Yu's slight surprise, the great divine throne of heaven and earth could still resist. Hundreds of destructive power blasted out, and the world destruction dust flew 3 inches high. Then, it took the opportunity to fly away. Su Yu rolled up his sleeves and rolled up the world destruction dust, and at the same time, sprinkled a floating picture in front of him. It was a picture of space constantly changing, from one space to another, changing rapidly. It was as if the picture was a place full of boundless space. This was the space domain. After shrouding the great divine throne of heaven and earth, the great divine throne of heaven and earth seemed to be trapped in a maze. It seemed to be constantly flying forward, but in fact it was constantly spinning in place. Su Yu breathed a sigh of relief and walked over quickly, preparing to apply a seal to seal the great divine throne of heaven and earth. Unexpectedly, the earth was full of lotus flowers without warning. Hundreds of lotus flowers, like moths, flew into the space domain, corroding it into small holes the size of a needle's eye. Once there was a flaw in the domain, it was like an ant's hole in a dam of 1,000 miles. The great divine throne of heaven and earth immediately found a weak point, and instantly erupted the destructive power, blasting a gap in the domain, and took the opportunity to jump out of the domain. Su Yu's eyes narrowed. Who else could summon lotus flowers to fight against the enemy except for Star Maiden? The great divine throne of heaven and earth is not something you deserve. Star Maiden's cold voice came from the horizon. Her tone did not conceal her hatred for Su Yu. Su Yu's face fell, and he immediately chased after the great divine throne of heaven and earth, which was gradually flying away. However, as soon as he moved, lotus flowers appeared under his feet. Su Yu was slightly angry. Including this time, Star Maiden had interfered with him to seize important treasures twice. I will only warn you once, don't force me. Su Yu's voice was full of the space domain. Although he was very far away from Star Maiden, it was as if he was speaking in her ear. At the same time, wherever his voice passed, the lotus flowers on the ground were all twisted into powder by the fragmented space. Star Maiden, who was rushing over, narrowed her eyes and said in a low voice, "He has succeeded in transforming the rules into the domain. Moreover, it is the space domain." Zhan Wushuang, who was beside her, raised his eyebrows slightly. "What is it? What do you want to say?" Star Maiden asked when she saw Zhan Wushuang's strange expression. Zhan Wushuang had a complicated look in his eyes as he said, "I also know a person who is proficient in the rules of space. However, he should be in a very distant 3-star civilization, at least 1,000 years away from here." Star Maiden did not think much of it. Comprehending the rules of space is indeed a genius, but achieving the domain is the real deal. Occasionally, there were people who comprehended the rules of space by accident in the world, but if they did not achieve the domain, it was nothing. There were very few people like Su Yu who could achieve the space domain. Zhan Wushuang was deeply convinced. In his heart, Su Yu was still in a 3-star civilization as the Baihui sect master. How could he know how big the world was? Su Yu and I are already at 2 different levels. I don't think we will cross paths again in this life, Zhan Wushuang thought to himself. One was in a 3-star civilization, and the other was about to become a pathmaster. They were like 2 straight lines that would never cross paths again. Let's go after him. Both the purple flame demonic woman and the golden-eyed gentleman need the divine throne of heaven and earth. Once we get it, let them fight to the death, and we can take the opportunity to get rid of their control, Star Maiden said. Zhan Wushuang was slightly doubtful. The golden-eyed gentleman you mentioned is just a master of civilization, isn't he? With all due respect, he probably can't even defeat a finger of the purple flame demonic woman. Haha, the golden-eyed gentleman is just an ordinary master of civilization. Why would I join him? Don't worry, he hides his strength deeper than anyone else, and he is more terrifying. Star Maiden was full of confidence. She was not willing to become the plaything of the purple flame demonic woman, and she tried every possible way to get rid of him. The divine throne of heaven and earth before her was the only thing that could provoke a fight between them. Zhan Wushuang said, "I have a way to subdue the divine throne of heaven and earth within 100,000 feet of it." The 3 of them chased each other from afar. To avoid being recognized by people outside the forbidden death zone, Su Yu deliberately hid his figure. The divine throne of heaven and earth fled very quickly, and the chase lasted for 6 whole days. Finally, the divine throne of heaven and earth began to tire, especially after being attacked by Su Yu's space domain. Eventually, it slowed down and Su Yu caught up with it. Star Maiden and Zhan Wushuang also caught up with him. Once the Star Maiden's lotus mark was activated, Her speed was even faster than that of a pathmaster. Seeing that the divine throne of heaven and earth was just around the corner, Zhang Wushuang was excited, and he secretly clenched his fists. Han Xian, wait for me. He took a deep breath, and an extremely clear phantom of the throne immediately appeared above his head, as if it had materialized. This was the real destiny of the Tianyun Path Master. The divine throne of heaven and earth suddenly trembled and flew towards Zhang Wushuang. Its consciousness was filled with excitement and joy. Su Yu saw this scene and turned to look at Zhang Wushuang. He was surprised for a moment, and then regained his composure. It was unexpected, but it was reasonable. How could Zhang Wushuang be missing when the divine throne of heaven and earth appeared in the world? Looking at the divine throne of heaven and earth rushing towards Zhang Wushuang, Su Yu's eyes turned cold. When he sat on it, the divine throne of heaven and earth tried its best to destroy him. However, as soon as Zhang Wushuang appeared, he was like a dog that had seen meat and took the initiative to recognize him as its master. Chapter 2261. If you want to recognize me as your master, have you asked for my permission? Su Yu waved his hand, and a fiery red bracelet appeared in his palm. It was the relic of the great emperor of Tianyi. He took one out with 2 fingers and threw it at the heavenly throne of heaven and earth. Bang! The bead erupted with a terrifying power that far exceeded the patriarch's, blasting the divine throne of heaven and earth down from the sky. The throne, which was originally surrounded by fluorescent light, was now much dimmer. The entire throne was trembling. In the distance, Star Maiden and Zhang Wushuang couldn't help but glare angrily. What the hell? That was the heaven and earth divine throne. It was used to sit, not to fight. However, Su Yu did not stop. Then, a space domain trapped him in place, rendering him unable to move. At the same time, he took out the sinful sword and chased after him. Seeing this, Star Maiden was anxious and angry. Su, if you can't get it, don't you want others to get it? She formed a seal with her 2 fingers, and countless lotus flowers immediately spread out from the ground. They rushed forward and corroded a small hole in the space domain. Only then could the heavenly throne of heaven and earth shatter the domain and seize the opportunity to escape. However, Su Yu had already caught up with him. Zhaoxi, the most powerful sword, coupled with the incomparably sharp sinful sword, stabbed into the armrest of the throne. The heavenly divine throne of the heavens and earth trembled violently, and a crack appeared on the armrest from Su Yu's stab. However, this did not stop. Su Yu took out a silver fruit with a broken shell and poured out a stone from the fruit onto the divine throne of heaven and earth. The indestructible heavenly throne of heaven and earth suddenly let out a creaking sound as if it couldn't bear the weight. Hairline cracks appeared on the 4 legs, and the cracks continued to expand, looking like they were about to be completely crushed. Star Maiden and Zhang Wushuang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The heavenly throne of heaven and earth was about to be completely destroyed. At the same time, a furious roar came from the throne. Streams of destructive power surged out from it in an attempt to blast the stone away. However, the rock was terrifyingly heavy, and it was completely unmoved no matter how the energy of destruction attacked it. Instead, it pressed down onto the throne to the point it ceaselessly sank downwards. To be more precise, the entire earth was being pressed downwards. In the blink of an eye, the uplifted ruins were compressed into a concave basin. Moreover, the basin was still sinking rapidly. It was as if it was going to crush the entire heavenly legacy cave. Seeing that the divine throne of heaven and earth was about to be destroyed, Su Yu held the shell of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo in his hand and put the stone away. Only then could the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth take a breather. However, its consciousness had already been traumatized by Su Yu. She didn't even bother to throw herself into Zhang Wushuang's arms anymore. She spun around and dashed away. Su Yu's eyes were ice-cold as he chased after him with his sword in hand. The consciousness of the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth seemed to have sensed it. It shivered and ran for its life. Star Maiden and Zhan Wushuang followed behind, both shocked and furious. What's the background of that pirate leader surnamed Su? Zhan Wushuang was both annoyed and surprised. Judging from his cultivation, he should be around the same level as him. But his swordsmanship was terrifyingly brilliant. Moreover, he had so many strange but incomparably powerful things in his hands. For example, the bracelet and the silver fruit. Each item was more exaggerated than the last. I also want to ask. The Star Maiden's face became gloomy. She had been in close contact with Su Yu, so she assumed that she had already discovered some of his secret. But who would have thought that he had hidden himself too deeply? What he had discovered was only the tip of the iceberg. The three of them chased after the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth one after another. One day later, the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth was forced to the edge of the forbidden death zone. Outside the forbidden zone were the leaders of the various influences. Once the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth went out, he would be easily captured. Seeing that he had nowhere to go, Su Yu took a step forward and was about to use the space domain to seal him completely and take him away. Unexpectedly, right at that moment, two people with awe-inspiring auras charged out from the side. One of them was merely a half-step Downlord, so Su Yu didn't really care. The other was a strong man at the level of a family master. They seemed to have been lying in ambush. They suddenly attacked Su Yu, aiming for his vital parts. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. At this critical moment, he suddenly displayed the upper-level heavenly dragon body and transformed into a shining, holy half-human half-dragon. He clenched his left hand into a fist and punched the half-step Downlord fiercely. His right hand grasped the sinful sword and displayed the morning and night technique. 1 against 2. Bang! With 2 consecutive dull sounds, the half-step Downlord retreated frantically, the sound of something shattering coming from his body. Transparent glass-like fragments were scattered all over the ground under his robe. His eyes were filled with shock and lingering fear. My heavenly treasure robe. It was a defensive treasure robe from the Heavenly Heritage era. Under normal circumstances, even a strong man at the level of a family master couldn't even break it. However, at this moment, his opponent had shattered it with a single punch. The strength of his physique was unimaginable. Similarly, the strong man at the level of a family master didn't have it any better. His whole body was covered with sword wounds, and his domain had been cut in half by a single sword strike. Who are you? The strong man at the level of a family master was shocked. His opponent was wearing a bamboo hat that could conceal his aura and prevent others from seeing his true appearance. However, he couldn't think of anyone else who possessed a terrifying strength that wasn't any weaker than the family masters. Xia Donglai, Xia Rukin, the two of you really have a good plan, Su Yu said calmly. The two of them must have discovered the existence of the heaven and earth great divine throne a long time ago. They must have also discovered that Su Yu and the others were chasing after him. However, they didn't show themselves and just hid in the dark. They waited until Su Yu was alone before suddenly attacking him. They wanted to kill Su Yu and snatch the heaven and earth great divine throne. However, they didn't expect Su Yu's strength to be so ridiculously strong. Not only did they fail to kill him, but they were also seriously injured by him. Your Excellency, the heaven and earth great divine throne involves the entire 7 unique civilizations. It's not something you can monopolize. You'd better leave as soon as possible to avoid disaster. Xiaorukin warned. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Su Yu's cold eyes. You don't deserve to say that. Xia Donglai couldn't even withstand a simple blow from Xia Donglai, yet he still had the cheek to warn Su Yu. Was he feeling too good about himself, or had he been conceited for too long? Xiaorukin had always been proud and arrogant. He considered himself the number 1 person among the younger generation of the 7 unique civilizations. Chen'er, he's right. Don't say meaningless things, Xia Donglai said calmly, stopping Xia Rukan from speaking. If the other party was angered and insisted on killing Xia Rukan, Xia Donglai might not be able to stop him. Xia Donglai looked at Su Yu and said, "Your Excellency, how about we make a deal? Give the heaven and earth great divine throne to the seventh peerless family, and you can ask for anything you want." If he couldn't kill Su Yu, he would make a deal in exchange. Hearing this, Su Yu gently shook his head. "Are you grandfather and grandson all equally arrogant? Is the seventh peerless family worth more than an armrest of the heaven and earth great divine throne? What are you going to give me in exchange?" Su Yu had no interest in talking to them. He flew toward the heaven and earth great divine throne in an instant and said without turning his head, "Don't do anything stupid." Chapter 2262. Xia Rukan's self-esteem was stimulated, and he was about to chase after them, but he was stopped by Xia Donglai, who shook his head and said, "Don't act rashly. But can we just watch as he takes away the heavenly divine throne right under our noses?" Xia Rukan said unwillingly. Xia Donglai calmly sheathed his sword and said, "Your father did not rely on us to obtain the divine throne of heaven and earth. The real battlefield is outside." Xia En and the Purple Flame Demoness were the true powerhouses in the fight for the heavenly throne of heaven and earth. Their mission, as well as Star Maiden and Zhan Wushuang's, was actually just to find the divine throne of heaven and earth, and bring it out of the forbidden death zone. In the end, it would be up to Xia Yan and the Purple Flame Demoness to decide who would end up with it. In a few strides, Su Yu caught up with the great divine priest of the heaven and earth, who had no way out. He confined him with a space domain, and then quickly set up a seal so that he could not move. The heavenly throne of heaven and earth was finally in his hands. However, it was only temporary. Su Yu narrowed his eyes as he gazed at the scene outside. This was the edge of the forbidden death zone, so how could the battle just now be hidden from the powerhouses outside? Xie Xiaoye, Emperor Pejun, Miezheng, the leaders of the third and fifth peerless families, Xia Ian, the Purple Flame Demoness, the Greedy Wolf King, Snow Dream Flying Rain, and others had all arrived. Countless pairs of almost solid eyes stared at Su Yu and the heavenly divine throne in his hands. Because of the frost immortal moths, they did not dare to barge in. However, if Su Yu wanted to go out and successfully escape from them, the possibility was almost zero. At the same time, Star Lady and Zhan Wushuang caught up. Star Maiden stared fixedly at the heavenly throne of heaven and earth. When she got closer, she launched an attack to snatch the heavenly throne. If it weren't for Star Maiden and Zhan Wushuang, Su Yu would have been able to slowly transform the rules into a domain in the forbidden death zone. But now there was a tiger in front and a wolf behind. Su Yu's mind was racing, and after a moment, a look of determination flashed across his eyes. He tore open the seal of the heavenly throne of heaven and earth and said, "Whether you can escape or not will depend on your luck." Then, amidst the Star Maiden's shouts, she pushed the heavenly divine throne out of the forbidden death zone. Instead of being hunted down by the whole world, it was better to let the world fight to the death for the great divine throne of the heaven and earth first, and then Su Yu could snatch it away at the end. The moment the heavenly throne of heaven and earth appeared in the outside world, Xia Yan and the Purple Flame Demoness made their moves at the same time. At this moment, Xia Yan unleashed his true cultivation base. Her aura was on par with the Purple Flame Demoness. The latter was shocked. Ichthyosaur realm. Xia Yan said indifferently, "Please show mercy, Purple Flame Demoness." Humph! The Purple Flame Demoness body was engulfed in flames as she charged toward the divine throne of heaven and earth. Xia Yan also rushed over. The two of them inevitably confronted each other in public. The resulting destructive shockwave could only be described as peerless. Half of the heavenly legacy cave abode began to shake because of it. The heaven and earth divine throne was sandwiched between the two. After being shaken, it spun around and fled in another direction. Xia Yan and the Purple Flame Demoness refused to give in to each other. Neither of them had any intention of stopping. Xie Xiaoya's eyes flashed. She took the opportunity to rush up and grab the divine throne of heaven and earth. However, Emperor Defeating Army was also ready to take action. He immediately rushed forward. A mere pirate alliance dares to touch the heavenly throne of heaven and earth? Get lost. The two of them had new and old grudges. They immediately started fighting each other. The heavenly god of heaven and earth was rather cunning. After causing the two to fight, he flew away. Everywhere they passed, there was an intense battle. Before long, the entire restricted area was filled with smoke and fire. The heavenly god of heaven and earth was not in a hurry to escape. Instead, he dodged left and right, weaving through the crowd and incessantly causing battles. Finally, when the entire area was in chaos, he finally fled in a predetermined direction. Most of the people were still engaged in battle. Only a few people noticed him and hurriedly gave chase. As such, the pressure on the heavenly god of heaven and earth was greatly reduced. Su Yu's eyes flashed. His figure, which was standing with his hands behind his back, distorted and shattered into ripples. The next moment, a distorted figure slowly appeared behind Xia Yi and the others. This was the magical effect of the space domain. As long as one's consciousness could reach it, they could travel across space. In terms of speed, Xia Yi and the others were not as fast. However, he was not in a hurry to catch up. If he obtained the heavenly god of heaven and earth now, he would only become a target for everyone. The crowd chased after him. A few days later, they had traversed half of the Heavenly Legacy cave abode and arrived at the central region. Xia Yi and the purple flame demonic woman temporarily put aside their dispute and joined forces to chase after the heavenly god of heaven and earth, trapping him in a region. Without a word, the purple flame demonic woman flicked a blue jade pendant hanging in front of her chest. The jade pendant spontaneously combusted in the air and turned into a towering flame. In an instant, the entire region turned into a raging sea of fire, engulfing the heavenly god of heaven and earth. Xia Yi frowned and punched it, but the sea of fire only shook slightly. Divine Flame Domain. Xia Yi's expression changed slightly. Among the 4 demons of the Starfire civilization, the most powerful one was the Divine Flame Demonic Woman. She had not shown her face for half an era, but half an era ago, she was already a strong man whose name shook the Taichu era. When she became famous, the Tianyi Great Emperor had not yet been born. Now, no one knew the true strength of the Divine Flame Demonic Woman. However, judging from the domain before them, she was probably so powerful that people could only look up to her. She might even have stepped into that legendary realm. Haha, the heavenly god of heaven and earth is mine after all. The purple flame demonic woman curled her finger, and the towering flame enveloping the heavenly god of heaven and earth shrank and flew toward her palm. Seeing that the heavenly god of heaven and earth was about to fall into someone else's hands, the strong men who had rushed over finally stopped hiding. Tianyi right hand. Xie Xiaoya clenched her teeth and summoned a stone-gray palm. An eye was embedded in the center of the palm. The eye was originally tightly shut, but after Xie Xiaoya injected energy into it, the eye suddenly opened as if it were a living thing. Instantly, the purple flame demonic woman's body started to petrify. A hint of wariness appeared in the purple flame demonic woman's eyes. One of the 6 treasures of the heavenly legacy. Petrify right hand. She quickly raised her finger that could still move, and a ball of purple flames burned on her waist. The flames immediately burned her entire body, directly burning the petrified body to prevent it from endangering her entire body. Xie Xiaoya was shocked. She can even resist the treasure left behind by the Tianyi Great Emperor? Even if the purple flame demonic woman's strength wasn't on the level of the Tianyi Great Emperor, she was not far from it. Watch me. Emperor Pajuan grinned, and also summoned a hand. He clenched his other 4 fingers, and only his index finger was raised. He clenched his fist and pointed at the purple flame demonic woman. Tianyi left palm. Instantly, the flames on the purple flame demonic woman's body were extinguished, and ice appeared from the inside out. The extinguishing of the flames caused the petrification to continue. However, this was not enough. At least, it was not enough to kill the purple flame demonic woman. Tianyi foot. Miezheng had also obtained a treasure left behind by the Tianyi Great Emperor. It was a crystal foot the size of a fist, and it looked like an accessory. Chapter 2263. The purple flame demonic woman had the power of petrification and the power of ice. She was completely defenseless. She spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot after being stomped by the foot. The 3 treasures of the 6 treasures of the heavenly legacy would have turned anyone else into ashes. However, the purple flame demonic woman was merely injured. Moreover, it was only a minor injury. The purple flame demonic woman laughed. Her laughter made the hearts of everyone present jump. Her voice became low and sinister. "What can you do to me, a fallen civilization?" With a low growl, the purple flame demonic woman's body surged with dark purple flames. First, she evaporated the ice, then extinguished the power of petrification in her body. Finally, she grabbed the heavenly divine throne with one hand and lifted the giant foot that was suppressing her with the other. Scram! With a furious roar, the purple flame demonic woman shook her arm and sent the giant foot flying. The onlookers were shocked. Even the 3 treasures of the heavenly legacy could not suppress the purple flame demonic woman? How strong was she? Only 3 of the 6 treasures had appeared. The other 3 had yet to appear. The demonic soul stone was in Su Yu's hands, and the golden-eyed Langjun had the treasure in his abdomen. The last one was in the hands of no one knew who had it. "You've run out of ideas, haven't you? If that's the case, it's my turn now." The flames on the purple flame demonic woman's body surged, emitting a terrifying aura. Xia Yan's expression changed slightly. "All of you back off." It was obvious that the purple flame demonic woman had been suppressed by the many martial artists of the 7 unique civilizations. She was furious and ready to kill. Su Yu, who was in the crowd, secretly held the bracelet in his hand. If he had no other choice, he would have to attack. The remaining 6 pearls would not be able to kill the purple flame demonic woman, but they would still be able to injure her a little. Everyone retreated, and some even ran away. However, at that moment, a beautiful figure appeared 3 feet behind the furious purple flame demonic woman. It was none other than Bai Yun Hongxian. Holding the other foot, she appeared with a calm look in her eyes. "The 7 unique civilizations will not tolerate your impudence." After saying that, she channeled the power of desolation into the right foot in her hand. In an instant, he kicked the purple flame demoness back. Bai Yun Hongxian's concealment technique was too brilliant. Not only did Su Yu not notice her, but even someone as strong as the purple flame demoness was caught off guard, allowing her to appear within 3 feet of him. What was even more surprising was the last relic, the heavenly right foot. Everyone thought that it would be in the hands of the 3rd, 5th, or even Xiayan. In the end, it was not. It was in the hands of Bai Yun Hongxian, who no one paid any attention to. Under unexpected circumstances, the purple flame demoness suffered a sudden attack. Just as his aura was rising, he was sent flying by a kick that sent him vomiting blood. His body was also sent flying countless mountains and rivers. The heavenly throne of heaven and earth in her left hand finally slipped out of her grasp. Before the great god could escape, he was easily captured by Bai Yun Hongxian. Seeing this, Su Yu was secretly shocked. As expected, he could not underestimate the golden-eyed Longjuan's daughter. She was the one who hid the most. Even Su Yu had almost forgotten about it. But in the end, she was the one who appeared out of nowhere and snatched the heavenly throne of heaven and earth. Moreover, Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not believe that with Bai Yun Hongxian's intelligence, She could not fail to see that whoever held the heavenly throne of heaven and earth was their common enemy. If she dared to hold it in her hands, she must have something to rely on. As expected, before anyone could take action, a loud laughter came from afar. "Well done!" Bai Yun Hongxian smiled at the person behind her. "Father!" Everyone looked over. They could not see anyone, but in the blink of an eye, the golden-eyed Lang Jun teleported in front of everyone in an extremely strange way. Even the many guests that he had brought along with him stood in a row behind him. Golden-eyed Lang Jun? Xia Yi looked at him with a different expression than when he looked at the other masters of the aristocratic families. The way he looked at the golden-eyed Lang Jun was obviously a little fearful. "Haha, how have you been, everyone?" The golden-eyed Lang Jun cupped his fists and bowed to everyone present. Everyone's eyes were burning with greed. It was obviously easier for the purple-flame demonic woman to snatch the heavenly throne of heaven and earth from the golden-eyed Lang Jun. Without receiving a response from anyone, the golden-eyed Lang Jun smiled and took the heavenly throne of heaven and earth. He gently caressed the throne and said with a faint smile, "The heavenly throne of heaven and earth, you are a great treasure that many people dream of obtaining. But how many people really understand you?" His inexplicable words seemed to have not been heard by the crowd, who were filled with the desire to snatch it. Finally, the Pejuan Emperor could not hold it in any longer. He rushed forward and shouted, "Golden-eyed Lang Jun, put down the heavenly throne if you don't want to die." The golden-eyed Lang Jun laughed contemptuously. "You are a fool!" Crash! As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Yun Hongxian used the heavenly right leg to kick him. The Pejuan Emperor snorted coldly. "I have the heavenly 6 treasures too." He took out the heavenly frozen palm and collided with the heavenly right leg. The two were equally matched. Miezheng could not hold it in any longer. He leaped up. "Me too." Xie Xiaoye did not want to be left behind. She flew up with her left hand. "I must get the heavenly throne of heaven and earth." 3 treasures against 1 treasure. There was no doubt about the outcome. The treasures in Bai Yun Hongxian's hands flew out. Seeing the powerful power of the 3 treasures charging forward, aiming to kill Bai Yun Hongxian retreated slowly, as if she was not worried at all. The smile on the golden-eyed Lang Jun's face deepened. The heavenly 6 treasures also have different levels. If you snatch them without any purpose, you will only benefit others. He flipped his palm, and a beating heart appeared in his palm. In that heart there was a mixture of blood. There was divine blood, and there was also the blood of the Path Master. Su Yu's pupils shrank slightly. He immediately recalled the time when the golden-eyed Lang Jun went around capturing people and pouring their blood into the pool of blood. At that time, he saw the pool of blood tumbling as if there was something inside. Now that he thought about it, it was this treasure that was absorbing the blood. What was extremely strange was that when the 5th treasure appeared, the other 4 treasures all underwent strange changes. The first was the heavenly right leg that flew out of his hand. It flew towards the area around the heart. The other 3 treasures controlled by Xie Xiaoye, Pejuan Emperor, and Miezheng were trembling uncontrollably. They struggled to break free from the control of the 3 of them. The 3 of them were shocked. They did not understand what was happening. They tried their best to control the treasures that they had obtained with great difficulty. Who knew that the treasures would turn around and attack them, forcing them to let go of them? The 3 of them were not the purple flame demons. If they were attacked by the treasures, they would be turned into ashes. They threw away the treasures, their scalps numb. Thus, the 3 treasures returned to the area around the heart, like swallows returning to their nest. At this point, all 5 treasures had fallen into the hands of the golden-eyed Lang Jun. "Ha ha!" The golden-eyed Lang Jun laughed loudly. He suddenly bit his finger and dripped a drop of the Path Master's blood. Chapter 2264. They turned into flesh and blood, bones, skin, and hair, wrapping around the 5 pieces of the heavenly legacy. In 3 breaths of time, it condensed into a humanoid creature. His facial features were clear and extremely similar to Xia Yan's. This day has finally come. Golden-eyed playboy took a deep breath and calmed his excitement. On the other hand, the crowd was filled with fear. Only then did they realize what the 5 heavenly treasures represented. Those were the 5 body parts of the Sky Legacy Emperor: hands, feet, heart. Could it be that not only was the Tiani Emperor dead, but he was also dismembered into 6 parts and hidden in his own cave abode? Everyone felt as if they were being baptized by the torrent of history, allowing them to unravel the mysteries of half an era. Back then, the Sky Legacy Emperor, who looked down on the starry sky, disappeared overnight, and his whereabouts were unknown. The glorious Heavenly Legacy era was reduced to the dust of history. Today, a corner of the eternal truth had been uncovered. The Sky Legacy Heavenly Emperor had already fallen in his own Sky Legacy cave abode. Xia Yan stared at the body that had been reconstructed from 5 parts of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor's body. Finally, he stared at the golden-eyed playboy. "Who are you?" As a descendant of the Sky Legacy Emperor, even Xia Yan did not know the secret of the Sky Legacy cave abode. However, golden-eyed Langjun knew it like the back of his hand. The golden-eyed scholar smiled gently. There was a sense of relief hidden in his smile. "I am the same as you, a descendant from the Heavenly Legacy era. The difference is that you have the bloodline of the Sky Legacy Emperor, while I am the descendant of the Sky Legacy Emperor's Empress." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. There were many historical records of the Sky Legacy Tharch, but there were very few mentions of the Sky Legacy Thearcha's Empress. Even if she did, it was only in a few words. Her presence was very insignificant. Only Xia Yan knew more secret. He muttered, "No wonder. I've always found it strange that you, who have never comprehended the law of time, possess the ability to connect the past and future of time. So, you are the descendant of the time and space god of death." Ordinary people only knew that the Sky Legacy Emperor's strength was unparalleled in the world. He defeated all the surrounding civilizations and created endless glory for the Sky Legacy civilization. However, could a single Tiani Emperor support such prosperity? How vast was the great beginning realm? Was there no lord of civilization more powerful than the Tiani Emperor? Of course. For example, the divine flaming demoness from the Starfire civilization. She was a sovereign-level powerhouse who had dominated the past and present. She could look down on all the masters of the 7-star civilizations. Then why was the Heavenly Legacy civilization able to grow so quickly and smoothly? It was all because of the existence of the Empress who had mastered the space and time domain. During the pioneering era of the Tiani civilization, whenever they encountered an opponent that even the Tiani Emperor could not contend against, the Empress hiding behind the scenes would take action. She activated time reversal, returning to the past, appearing when the enemy was weak or had a flaw, and killing them in another time and space. No enemy had ever been able to escape her pursuit. Therefore, he was known as the god of death of time and space, meaning that he was the god of death who walked in time and space. This was the truth behind the Heavenly Legacy civilization's glory and prosperity. Although the Tiani Great Emperor had created a great empire, the Empress behind the scenes was the true pioneer. Without her, the Heavenly Legacy civilization would only be a mid-level 7-star civilization. Then, one day, for some reason, the Tiani Emperor disappeared, and the Queen was nowhere to be found. The entire Tiani civilization soon fell apart. Xia Yan had never imagined that the #1 aristocratic family under her eyes was actually the descendants of the Empress. He stared at the golden-eyed playboy and said, "So you are both the descendants of the Tiani Emperor? Why didn't you tell me earlier? If we join forces, we might be able to bring the 7 civilizations back to the peak of the Tiani era." Everyone in the 7 civilizations looked forward to the Tiani era. Xia Yan was no exception. However, the golden-eyed playboy only laughed coldly. Ha ha! Cooperate with the descendants of the Tiani Emperor? Do you know how the Tiani Great Emperor died? All of a sudden, everyone focused their attention. The fall of the Tiani Great Emperor was an eternal mystery, a mystery that everyone longed to unravel. Su Yu's eyes darted back and forth between the golden-eyed playboy and Xia Ian. He had some guesses in his heart. It probably had something to do with Pianxian's concubine, right? Xia Ian's pupils shrank and he cupped his fists. If you know anything, please enlighten me. There is no need for enlightening me. As a descendant of the Tiani Great Emperor, you should know, the golden-eyed playboy said calmly. The Tiani Great Emperor was killed by the Empress in a fit of rage. What? Everyone was petrified on the spot. They had speculated for a long time. The most common guess was that the Tiani Great Emperor had angered a super-strong man during the expansion of the Tiani civilization. That was why the Tiani Great Emperor had been killed or captured overnight. But the truth was so absurd. He had not died at the hands of the enemy, but at the hands of the Empress, who had painstakingly helped him conquer half of his empire. Moreover, she had cruelly divided his body into 6 pieces and buried them in the Tiani Great Emperor's cavern world. How is it? Are you surprised? Absolutely impossible, Xia Ian said in a low voice. According to the historical records of my family, the Empress's love for the Tiani Great Emperor was the most sincere. She knew that by reversing the flow of time, she would not live for more than 500 years, but for the sake of her lover's empire, she willingly sacrificed herself. The golden-eyed playboy laughed coldly. Yes, it is precisely because the love is so deep that the hatred is so deep. What kind of hatred would cause the Empress to dismember his body in a fit of rage? The Tiani Great Emperor betrayed the Empress, the golden-eyed playboy said coldly. At his most glorious moment, he abandoned the Empress and married a woman named Pianxian. Hearing this, Su Yu smiled bitterly. He had guessed correctly. That strange palace of Pianxian and the strange corpse had always puzzled Su Yu. Xia Ian frowned. As an emperor, isn't it normal for the Tiani Great Emperor to have many wives and concubines? How could he have abandoned her? The golden-eyed playboy laughed coldly with a hint of anger. It is indeed normal for him to have many wives and concubines, but the Tiani Great Emperor asked the Empress to give the position of the Empress's wife to Pianxian, and because he was afraid of the Empress's time and space domain, he poisoned her with the heavenly law and was prepared to destroy her domain. Is this normal? Had such a thing happened? Had the Tiani Great Emperor really done that? A woman who had sacrificed her life and her lifespan to help her lover conquer the empire had ended up like this? Even if they revered the Tiani Great Emperor, they felt that the Empress was unworthy. The Tiani Great Emperor had not only disappointed the Empress's heart, but he had also killed her. So, that night, the Empress's temperament changed drastically. She killed the Tiani Great Emperor with her own hands and buried his body in the Tiani cavern. The golden-eyed playboy's words were laced with coldness. Xia Ian was silent for a long time before he let out a long sigh. He did not want to believe the truth, but it seemed that he had no choice but to doubt it. That was the only way to explain the sudden collapse of the Tiani civilization. After a pause, Xia Ian said, "Golden-eyed playboy, that is already a matter of our ancestors. You and I are both the descendants of the Tiani Great Emperor and the Empress. From today onwards, we will work hand in hand to inflict heavy damage to the Tiani Great Era." Chapter 2265. Dream on. The golden-eyed gentleman seemed to have gone mad. How can the Empress' grievances be erased with just a few words? Xia Ian frowned deeply. If what the golden-eyed scholar said was true, then the first and 7th families were the same. They were both descendants of the Tiani the Great and the Empress. However, the 7th peerless clan considered themselves to be the successor of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor. The first peerless family was the Empress. Essentially, they were of the same bloodline. Then what do you want? Xia Yan asked calmly. Golden-eyed playboy had a crazed look on his face. Of course, it's to destroy this place that made the Empress sad. His original intention was to destroy the 7 absolute civilizations. Moreover, not only did he have the intention, but he also had the ability. Xia Yan's heart sank as he stared at the Sky Legacy Emperor's body. It was hard to say how strong the amalgamation of the Sky Legacy Emperor's 5 bodies was. Golden-eyed Langjun, please wake up. Even if the great Emperor owes the Empress, that is the long-cherished wish of our 7th peerless family and your 1st peerless family. Is there a need to destroy the entire 7 ultimate civilizations? The other aristocratic families did not provoke the Empress. Hearing this, Golden-eyed Longjuan's cold smile deepened. Then you should ask their ancestors what the Empress' last words were. Were they supposed to guard the Heavenly Legacy civilization? But what did they do? Carve up the Heavenly Remains civilization during the chaos. A group of rebels and traitors, they deserve to die. The Golden-eyed Prince reprimanded. There was such a secret? Back then, although the Queen was devastated, she did not vent her anger on the innocent Heavenly Legacy civilization. Instead, she allowed the loyal subjects of the Heavenly Legacy civilization to continue guarding the Heavenly Legacy civilization. What the Empress didn't expect was that not long after she left, the officials started to act out of selfishness. They started to scheme against each other and fight against each other. In the end, it developed into a war between them, and the Sky Legacy Heavenly Empire fell apart as a result, resulting in the current situation of the 7 absolute clans. Xia Yan shouted, "Then what about the ordinary people? Did they mistreat the Empress?" The golden-eyed scholar chuckled. "Since all of you are dead, this debt will be written off. Naturally, it will not endanger the common people." At this point, anyone would be able to discern Golden-eyed Longjuan's true intentions. Avenge the Empress? They were separated by half an epoch, and there was no connection between them at all. What motive did Golden-eyed Langjun have to avenge the Empress? His true motive was just to gloriously eradicate all the forces in the 7 absolute civilizations and justifiably unify the 7 absolute civilizations. Xia Yan's eyes darkened and he said coolly, "That will depend on whether or not we resign ourselves to death." He took the initiative to attack, and a vast domain appeared behind him. His domain was like a boundless great river. It surged over as if it was real, devouring the sun, moon, and stars. In front of such a domain, patriarch-level powerhouses were like moths flying into a flame, instantly extinguished. However, the golden-eyed playboy was not afraid at all. Instead, he let out a long roar. "Fine, I'll show you the remaining power of the Sky Legacy Emperor." He let go of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor's body and injected a strand of Daelord's power into it. This power was like a key to open a sealed door. The Sky Legacy Emperor's body trembled slightly, and his tightly shut eyes slowly opened. His eyes were empty and soulless. "Go!" Golden-eyed Langjun said. Because the creation of this body was guided by a drop of Golden-eyed Longjuan's blood essence, the Sky Legacy Emperor's body was very obedient to him. Furthermore, it was spiritually connected to the Golden-eyed Langjun, and it understood what he meant and who he wanted to kill. The Sky Legacy Emperor took a step toward Xia Yan. This step seemed to cause the entire Sky Legacy cave abode to tremble. The domain that Xia Yan had condensed was directly shattered. He grunted as if he had suffered a heavy blow, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. A single strike from the void had injured Xia Yan, the strongest powerhouse in the 7 absolute civilizations. The patriarchs who had been hoping for a fluke changed their expressions, and they immediately fled in all directions. However, the Sky Legacy Emperor merely stomped his foot on the ground, and the space within 100,000 feet suddenly became abnormally heavy, pressing down on everyone. The patriarchs who had been fleeing fell to the ground at the same time. Under that suffocating pressure, their Daelord's power seemed to be condensed within their bodies, and they could not unleash any of it. The pupils of the Pajuan Emperor, Miezheng, and the others shrank to the size of needles. Was that the power of the Sky Legacy Emperor? To be precise, it was only the remnant power, not even 1,000th of his true power. Even so, it was enough to suppress these so-called patriarchs to the point where they could not even retaliate. Kill them all. Leave no one alive, the golden-eyed scholar ordered coldly. The Sky Legacy Emperor's body immediately took another step forward. Instantly, a pressure 10 times stronger than before suddenly pressed down on every patriarch. The Pajuan Emperor and Miezheng were shocked. Without any hesitation, they took out the other treasures they had found in the Sky Legacy cave abode. Unfortunately, both of them obtained defensive magic treasures. The Pajuan Emperor took out a round pearl that floated above his head. It emitted a clear light that enveloped his body. Miezheng took out a puppet to block in front of him to share the boundless pressure coming from above. The patriarchs of the 3rd and 5th absolute families were not so lucky. They did not have powerful artifacts to protect themselves, and under the pressure 10 times stronger than before, they were suddenly crushed into dust. Not even a drop of Daelord's blood was left behind, and everything was turned into dust. 2 patriarchs were killed in an instant. The Pajuan Emperor and Miezheng, who had luckily escaped death, did not have time to rejoice, because the Sky Legacy Emperor took another step forward. This time, the pressure was even more powerful. The round pearl on top of the Pajuan Emperor's head finally could not bear the pressure anymore, and with a crack, it shattered. The Pajuan Emperor suffered a heavy blow, and he was sent flying backward while vomiting blood, his face golden. Miezheng was not much better off. Even though the puppet helped to share some of the pressure this time was too great. His body finally could not bear it, and blood flowed continuously from his pores. In front of the Sky Legacy Emperor, they were like ants. The golden-eyed scholar laughed sinisterly. Everyone, let's kill them together. He had only targeted the patriarchs just now. Xie Xiaoye, Su Yu, Xuemeng Fiyu, and the others had not been attacked yet. After a slight pause, the Sky Legacy Emperor lifted his foot high into the air. Boom! The atmosphere in the Sky Legacy cave abode flowed crazily. Countless spiritual veins were rapidly drying up, and the sky was rapidly darkening. The distant space barrier was faintly discernible. This stomp would destroy more than half of the Sky Legacy cave abode. None of the people present would be able to survive. Xia Yan's expression changed slightly, and he shouted, "Don't hold back anymore, or all of you will die." The direction he was referring to was not the heavily injured Pajuan Emperor and Miezheng, but the ruins in the distance. Thud! Within the ruins, raging flames suddenly spouted out, and in an instant, the ruins were burned to ashes. A woman, whose whole body was burning with purple flames, walked over slowly. "Good. You have the ability to plot against me." The purple flame demoness wiped away a drop of Daelord's blood from the corner of her mouth, and glared fiercely at Bai Yun Hongxian. Swish! She clenched her left hand, and a long spear burning with purple flames appeared with a flicker. Chapter 2266. Seeing that he was being serious, Xia Yan did not hide anymore and took out a large seal from his sleeve. The large seal was none other than the imperial seal of the Tianyi Great Emperor. In terms of divine power, few treasures of the Tianyi Great Emperor were more powerful than the imperial seal. The grin on the golden-eyed playboy's face faded slightly and was replaced with fear. However, there was no turning back now. "Go!" Roar! The Tianyi Great Emperor let out a low roar and charged forward, taking 6 or 7 steps in a row. Each step was more powerful than the last. The purple flame demoness and Xia Yan felt like mountains were falling on them, and they were in great pain. However, they were all strong men who had experienced countless battles. They endured the pain and joined forces to fight back. Heaven-splitting purple spear. Tianyi's mandate. The 2 treasures were unleashed at the same time, and the tremendous power produced shook the entire Tiani cavern. The rivers changed their course, the mountains shifted, the earth rolled, and the sky split open. The combined power of the two was unparalleled. Not only did the Tiani Great Emperor's foot not land, it was blasted away, causing the Tiani Great Emperor to retreat continuously. Finally, he staggered and fell to the ground. The purple flame Demonis and Xia Yan stood side by side. One emitted an evil purple flame, while the other held a golden sun in his hand. One purple and one golden, they looked like two gods of war. The golden-eyed playboy's eyes were calm. He did not expect Xia Yan and the purple flame Demonis to have such powerful trump cards. However, the gloomy look on his face only flickered for a moment before disappearing. It was replaced by a deep, cold smile. Fortunately, the heavenly throne of heaven and earth is in my hands. Otherwise, you would have turned the tables. He tore open the seal of the heavenly throne of heaven and earth. The Tiani Great Emperor sat on it, stupefied. Suddenly, the heavenly throne of heaven and earth released a terrible destructive power. It seemed like it did not approve of the Tiani Great Emperor's reconstructed body. However, the body of the Tiani Great Emperor was not something Su Yu could compare with. The destructive power could not harm his body at all. Instead, it was absorbed by the Tiani Great Emperor. Then, the Tiani Great Emperor raised his finger and pointed at the purple flame Demonis and Xia Yan. To their shock, his finger actually emanated the energy of destruction from the divine throne of the heavens and the earth. It turned out that the Sky Legacy Martial Monarch's body was able to use the star transposition technique to attack others with the power of destruction. Although the destructive force was unable to destroy the Sky Legacy Martial Monarch, it was more than enough to destroy the purple flame Demonis and Xia Yan. Dodge. Xia Yan's eyelids twitched violently. He and the purple flame Demonis immediately dodged in different directions. Bang, although the power of destruction didn't hit them, the remaining power still injured them. Most shockingly, the divine flames on the purple flame Demonis' sky-splitting purple spear were extinguished. As for the seal in Xia Yan's hand, cracks appeared on it, and its power was halved. Their hearts were heavy to the extreme. The destructive power of the heavenly throne of heaven and earth was truly too terrifying. Golden-eyed Longjuan's heart was at ease. The corners of his lips curled up as he said, "Accumulate your strength and destroy all of them." The Sky Legacy Heavenly Monarch sat still on the heavenly throne of heaven and earth, allowing the heavenly throne to gather the power of destruction into his body. 1, 2, 3 Soon, there were more than 100 of them. Inside the Sky Legacy Heavenly Monarch's body, it was expanding at a rapid rate, showing a terrible danger of extinction. Once it was all released, everyone present would die. Even the purple flame Demonis and Xia Yan. At this time, Biyun Hongxian's lips moved. Her beautiful eyes searched the crowd, and finally fell on Su Yu. She lowered her voice and whispered in the ear of golden-eyed Langjun, "Father, Su Rushu is inside. This time, we obtained the heavenly throne of heaven and earth mostly because of him." If Su Yu had not released the heavenly throne of heaven and earth from the forbidden death zone, they might not have been able to carry out their plan to this stage. Golden-eyed Langjun was indifferent. His mission has been completed. There is no point in keeping him alive. "But father, you promised him," Biyun Hongxian pleaded. Golden-eyed Longjuan's golden eyes looked at Biyun Hongxian calmly. "As a descendant of the Sky Legacy Empress, you can't be soft-hearted. Stand aside and don't speak, or else." Biyun Hongxian's lips trembled, but she did not dare to resist. She could only cast a deeply apologetic look at Su Yu. At this time, the Sky Legacy Great Emperor's body began to tremble, unable to withstand the nearly 300 streaks of destructive path power. Golden-eyed Langjun stretched his arms comfortably, looked around, and laughed. "Let's begin." The Sky Legacy Great Emperor stood up from the heavenly throne of heaven and earth, and roared into the sky. The 300 streaks of destructive path power in his body began to leak out from his body. With the horror of the destructive path power, even a trace of its residual power could kill a master-level strong man. What more a half-step path master? Once this blow was released, the entire Sky Legacy Cavern would be obliterated, and no one would survive. Everyone present was filled with despair, and they did not have the slightest hope of survival. They could only watch helplessly as the Sky Legacy Great Emperor released the destructive path power. However, at this moment, Suyu, who was in the crowd, calmly took out a snow-white ring and put it on his finger. Then, he slowly pointed at the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor and said calmly, "Stop." Strangely, the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor actually stopped, and the destructive path power that was about to leak out of his body was also restrained. The purple flame demonic woman and Xia Yan were stunned, not understanding what was happening. The onlookers were even more surprised, and they looked at each other. The one who was most shocked was the golden-eyed playboy. The Sky Legacy Great Emperor had suddenly stopped, which was completely unexpected. "Continue," the golden-eyed playboy ordered. However, the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor remained motionless, no longer obeying orders, and a vortex appeared on his back. The essence blood that the golden-eyed playboy had dripped earlier flew out of the vortex and was expelled by the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor. In this way, the golden-eyed playboy could no longer control the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor. How could this be? The golden-eyed playboy had been scheming for most of his life just for this day. He had relied on the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor the most. However, now that he had lost the body of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor, he had nothing left. He did not understand why this was happening. He had opened the river of time and space and seen the future. In the future, everyone was killed by the Sky Legacy Great Emperor, and the entire 7 ultimate civilizations fell into the hands of the golden-eyed playboy. But why did the future change? Could it be that there was a mysterious powerful being secretly controlling the course of fate? In the crowd, Suyu stroked the finger between his fingers and smiled faintly. This finger was the one he had found on the finger of a statue of a general when he had first entered the outermost Tiani city. He did not expect that the ring placed right before everyone's eyes was the most important treasure of the Tiani cavern. The 7th treasure left behind by the Sky Legacy Great Emperor. Suyu had never understood why there would be a fake Tiani city outside the real Tiani cavern. It was only when the 5 major parts of the Sky Legacy Great Emperor reassembled into a human form that the ring responded, that Suyu understood. It turned out that the city was the 7th great region of the Tiani cavern. Chapter 2267. This ring was enough to control the entire Heavenly Legacy cave abode, including the body of the Tiani Great Emperor buried in the cave abode. But why did the Sky Legacy Emperor leave behind a ring that could control the Sky Legacy cave abode? Furthermore, it was placed in such a conspicuous place, as if it was deliberately waiting for someone to pick it up. Could it be that the Sky Legacy Emperor had already predicted that something might happen to him before he died, so he left a backup plan in advance? Burying the question deep in his heart, Suyu rubbed the ring, trying to secretly control part of the Tiani Great Emperor's body to see if he could make use of it. Unfortunately, the ring did not seem to have a strong binding effect on him. Apart from telling him not to move, he couldn't make him do anything else. Suyu's heart was filled with great disappointment. The most precious thing in the Tiani cave abode should be the body of the Tiani Great Emperor. Without being able to control him, what was the use of this ring? Who is it? Who's behind this? Golden-eyed Langjun asked in a low voice. The only response he got was silence. The others were reminded by his words and looked around in surprise. Indeed, to be able to make the Sky Legacy Great Emperor's body unable to move, there must be an expert who had secretly made a move. However, just as their attention was diverted elsewhere, golden-eyed Playboy's eyes flashed. He suddenly threw out a Heavenly Legacy battleship and swept up everyone from the number 1 peerless family. Then, he broke through the air and fled. It turned out that golden-eyed Langjun was deliberately diverting everyone's attention. By the time someone realized what was going on, the golden-eyed Langjun had already escaped far away. If he gave chase now, he should still be able to catch up. After all, the 7th-ranked Absolute clan also had a heavenly legacy warship. However, no one chased after them, because the great divine throne of heaven and earth was still there. Whoosh, 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 Xia Yan and the purple flame demoness attacked at the same time. With no one to obstruct them, the battle between the two immediately reached its climax. The rest of the people could only retreat, unable to approach at all. The battle between them lasted for an entire day and night. Finally, Xia Yan was at a disadvantage. After all, the purple flame demoness had lived for almost half an era. Although Xia Yan had risen to prominence, he was still slightly inferior to her. Retreat. The purple flame demoness successfully pierced a bloody hole in Xia Yan's shoulder with her sky-splitting purple spear. Wisps of mysterious flames followed the wound and spread into his body. Xia Yan had no choice but to retreat, immediately using the power of a Daolord to seal his wounds. As such, no one would be able to fight the purple flame demoness anymore. She looked at all the martial artists present mockingly. "A bunch of ants, do you think you're worthy of competing with me?" With that, he grabbed the divine throne of heaven and earth. Everyone saw this and felt anxious in their hearts. There was no doubt that the heavenly throne of the heavens and earth would belong to the purple flame demoness. Su Yu furrowed his brows. Judging from the purple flame demonic woman's appearance, it seemed like she still had about 80% of her power left. Hence, it would be impractical for him to fight with her now. All of a sudden, Su Yu had a thought, and he controlled the heavenly legacy cavern again. Behind the heavenly throne of heaven and earth, a crack that led to the outside world suddenly appeared. The crack appeared so suddenly that even the purple flame she-devil was caught off guard. She cursed under her breath and tried to seal the crack with her Tao Master's power. However, the heavenly divine throne of heaven and earth was in existence with extremely strong spirituality. It immediately found a way out and escaped in a flash. The purple flame demoness let out a loud roar as she tried to chase after him through the crack. However, the crack suddenly closed, causing him to miss his target. The purple flame demoness had fought with her life on the line, only to end up empty-handed. How could she not be angry? "Who? Show yourself if you have the guts." The purple flame demoness glared furiously at everyone present. Su Yu secretly curled his lips. Was he stupid? Would he step forward? The purple flame demoness glared at everyone angrily. "If you don't show yourself, I'll kill all of you. How dare you?" Xia Yan covered his wound. Although he was injured, he could still injure the purple flame demoness if he put his life on the line. The purple flame demoness was extremely furious. She had no time to waste on Xia Yan. She turned around and headed back in the direction she had come from, hoping to use the space there to return to the outside world. A faint smile flashed across Su Yu's lips as he murmured softly, "I've changed the way I refer to you now. This ring is actually very useful." With this ring, he could control the space transportation in the Heavenly Legacy Cavern at will. At this moment, without his permission, who could leave? Unless they blasted a hole in the Heavenly Legacy Cavern. He, who had no sense of presence, left quietly. Xie Xiaoye glanced at him. She did not recognize that the man in the bamboo hat was Su Yu, nor did she suspect his motives. Now, everyone wanted to get out as soon as possible and chase after the great divine priest of heaven and earth. Seeing that no one was following him, Su Yu went to a faraway place and found the snow swordsman and the others who were still hurrying on their way. With a wave of his hand, he summoned all of them into the cavern world. Then, he manipulated the ring and drew a crack in front of him. Then, he successfully left the Heavenly Legacy Cavern. When he reappeared, he was in the Heavenly Legacy City outside. In the Heavenly Legacy City, beside the pool in the middle of the square, the statue was crossing its legs, admiring itself in the pool. "Ah, I'm so beautiful, so beautiful!" Bang! All of a sudden, a space vortex appeared above its head, and a person fell from it, trampling it to the ground. "Ah, my face! My handsome face!" The statue squealed like a pig being slaughtered, as if someone was trying to kill it with a knife. Suyu had just appeared when he heard something strange beneath his feet. Looking down, he could not help but twitch the corners of his mouth. He really wanted to crush the statue with one foot, if not for the fact that he had something to ask him. "Which direction did the great divine priest of heaven and earth leave from?" Suyu yelled. The statue's head was on the ground, raising its finger and pointing to the top. Suyu looked up and saw that the huge seal above his head had a gap. It was broken by the great divine throne of heaven and earth with the power of destruction. With a tap of his toes, he used the power of space and immediately chased after it. "Ouch! It's broken! My face is broken!" The statue let out a shrill scream. The next moment, Suyu appeared in the void. In the direction where he had chased, people were returning one after another. Just now, when the great divine throne of heaven and earth broke through the seal, it was bound to be discovered by the forces that had been blocked outside the seal and could not enter. Suyu stopped one of them and asked, "Who has it fallen into?" A large number of people gave up the chase and returned. The reason was either that it had fallen into the hands of strong men or that it had completely escaped. Seeing that Suyu could step on the void, the man knew that Suyu was probably the Pathmaster. Naturally, he did not dare to hide anything and said, "Senior, the great divine throne of heaven and earth has escaped into the void and disappeared without a trace. No one has been able to catch up with it." Hearing this, Suyu was slightly relieved. As long as it had not been caught, then he still had a chance. Looking at the vast void, Suyu pondered for a while, then returned to the 7 unique civilizations. Blindly searching for the great divine throne of heaven and earth was tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. It was better to wait for it to come to him. Zhan Wushuang was locked up in the Heavenly Legacy Cavern by Suyu. As the master that the great divine throne of heaven and earth desperately wanted, the great divine throne of heaven and earth would not hide forever. Sooner or later it would reappear. He did not return to the Heavenly Legacy Cavern. Instead, after half a month, he rushed back to the old nest of the Pirate Alliance. Standing in front of the old nest, Suyu released all the pirates, including the Snow Swordsman. Chapter 2268. "Chief Su, why did you come out?" the Snow Bladesman asked as he looked at the place that was no longer the Heavenly Legacy cave abode. Suyu said placidly, "The dispute in the Tiani Cavern has ended." Hearing this, the Snow Swordsman and the others could not help but feel regretful. They had not explored enough there. "Where are the other leaders? Have you already returned to your lair?" the swordsman in the snow asked. Suyu's gaze became gloomy. They were all sacrificed by the purple flame demonic woman. Hiss, many of the pirates did not doubt it and gasped. "All dead? Leader Su, what do we do now?" Snow Bladesman felt very uneasy. With so many leaders dead, what would happen to the Pirate Alliance? Suyu replied calmly, "Of course, it's to reorganize the Pirate Alliance." The Snow Swordsman immediately understood what Suyu meant. He wanted to seize the opportunity to unify the Pirate Alliance. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face as he said, "Don't worry, leader. I'll lead my brothers to persuade them to surrender right now. If they don't obey us, we'll kill them all." Suyu nodded, then shook his head. "Those who don't obey us will naturally be killed, but a portion of those who obey us will also be killed." The swordsman in the snow was stunned. "Leader, what do you mean?" Suyu said indifferently, "Before we officially take action, help me find out the background of the other great pirates. Why did they join the pirates? Is it because he has been wronged and forced into a corner, or is it because he has committed so many crimes that he has no place to hide?" What if I'm guilty of countless crimes? The snow swordsman stared at Suyu and asked carefully. Kill. Suyu uttered coldly. He was in the Pirate Alliance, but he had never acknowledged them. While there were indeed people in the Pirate Alliance who had been forced into a corner, most of them had done too much evil and had no choice but to come to the Pirate Alliance, a place where darkness gathered. Their hands were stained with blood. How much evil had they committed? Their existence was like a nightmare to the living beings in the nearby star realm. There had never been a chance in the past, but now was the best time to get rid of this tumor. The way the snow swordsman looked at Suyu began to change. He had thought that Suyu was no different from an ordinary pirate, who was selfish and bloodthirsty. At this moment, Suyu's words had completely changed his impression of him. I obey Leader Su's orders. Actually, the Snowbladesman had joined the Pirate Alliance out of helplessness. Suyu's actions had won him over. An evil organization like pirates should have been destroyed long ago. Of course, before we officially take action, we'll first investigate our own people. Those who are evil and wicked will be killed without mercy. Yes. Very quickly, an invisible storm descended. First, it was the old subordinates of the Sea Wolf leader. Through soul-searching and other methods they found out who they were. If he had only been ordered by the leader of the Sea Wolves to rob them, he would have been able to escape. However, if the pirates committed malicious arson or violated women and children, they would all be killed on the spot without exception. Although there was resistance, with Suyu overseeing everything, who could resist? In the end, there were less than half of the Sea Wolf leader's old subordinates left. It was not easy to maintain one's purity and pride in a dirty place like Pirate. Go. Let's go to the Xiaoya pirates first. In truth, Xiaoya's pirates could be said to be a clean stream in the Pirate Alliance. She was very strict with the pirates under her command. They usually only robbed and rarely bullied women or killed people maliciously. Therefore, it was actually very easy to recruit them. After announcing Xiaoya's grievous news and threatening and enticing them at the same time, Xiaoya's pirates quickly surrendered. Moreover, every pirate had been sealed by Suyu and the core pirates under his command. They could no longer resist. After obtaining Xiaoya's pirates, Suyu followed the same pattern and annexed the Blue Phoenix pirates, White Moon pirates, and all the other pirates in the Pirate Alliance. He also carried out an internal purge. After half a year, the sky above this civilization was covered by a thick layer of blood energy. From afar, it looked like a ball of blood. The current Pirate Alliance could be said to exist only in name. The real villains had all been executed, and the rest were people who could still be saved. Apart from the pirates trapped in the Heavenly Legacy Cave, the rest of the pirates had fallen into Suyu's control. On this day, Suyu announced on the spot that the Pirate Alliance would be disbanded. A new organization had appeared. That was the Cauldron. They would become members of the Cauldron and be reborn as merchants. At the same time, after being trapped for half a year and unable to leave the Heavenly Legacy Cave, the people finally chose to let go of their former enmity. Whether it was the remaining three great families, the Pirate Alliance, or the hostile Purple Flame demonic woman, they all worked together to attack a weak point in the Heavenly Legacy Cave. Finally, after several months of incessant bombardment, they succeeded in opening a gap. Everyone filed out from it. Everyone present was at a loss. Half a year had passed since the great divine priest of heaven and earth left the Heavenly Legacy Cave. Where could they find him now? At least, the Pirate Alliance had temporarily given up on searching. They had been away from their nest for too long. It was better to go back and take a look as soon as possible. The 7 great families had suffered heavy losses. The masters of the 3rd and 5th great families had died tragically. The core members of the 4th great family, including the master, had all perished in the Forbidden Death Zone. The 7 great civilizations were now in chaos. They had no choice but to go back. Apart from the Purple Flame demonic woman, They had no intention of pursuing the great divine priest of heaven and earth. Beside the purple flame demonic woman, the Star Lady looked around with her cold eyes. However, she could not find Suyu. Could he have died in the Heavenly Legacy Cave? The Star Lady was suspicious, but after a moment she denied the idea. Based on her understanding of Suyu, he was extremely cunning and could not have died. However, the purple flame demonic woman was eager to pursue the great divine priest of heaven and earth. Obviously, she would not stay to look for Suyu. She had no choice but to leave with the purple flame demonic woman. She was extremely unwilling to let Suyu get what he deserved. She could not swallow this anger. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and moved towards Xiaoye. With a faint smile, she said, "Leader Xiaoye, why is Deputy Leader Su not here?" Xiaoye also felt strange. Ever since they met in the Forbidden Death Zone, Suyu seemed to have vanished into thin air. He must have perished. Other than that, there was no other possibility. Xiaoye felt a wave of regret in her heart. Such a talent had perished just like that. Even the heavens were jealous of him. Oh, that's a pity. However, I don't think Leader Xiaoye needs to feel sorry for him. The Star Lady smiled meaningfully. Xiaoye's eyes flickered. In a deep voice, she said, "If you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush." Haha, actually, Leader Su is also one of the golden-eyed Longjuan's men. The Star Lady Path Master spoke the truth. It's just that the golden-eyed Langjun didn't have the time to use him. Nonsense. Xiaoye rebuked her sternly. However, her eyes flickered slightly, showing that she was wavering. It was not that she did not believe in Suyu, but that Suyu was too outstanding. Such a person would be nurtured by every faction. How could they allow him to be wronged and forced to kill his way out of the number one peerless family to join the pirates? She had always had some doubts. However, she did not have any evidence, so she did not think about it deeply. The Star Lady's words had touched her heart. Chapter 2269. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. I'm just giving you a piece of advice. The Star Maiden smiled mysteriously. Then, she turned around and returned to the purple flame demoness side. Xiaoye stared at Star Maiden's back and fell into deep thought. After a while, a strange look appeared in his eyes as he said, "Let's go." The pirates behind her all followed Xiaoye back to the Pirate Alliance. At this moment, the Pirate Alliance had gone through a month of settling down. The blood clouds floating outside the civilization had already drifted into nothingness. At a glance, apart from being much quieter than before, there was nothing strange about the Pirate Alliance. "Return to your respective territories," Xiaoye said indifferently and flew back to her own territory. His powerful soul swept across the territory. Not only was there no frown, but there seemed to be some people missing. "Welcome back, leader." Many half-step Dao Lords flashed on one of the flagship ships at the same time. They were all capable subordinates that Xiaoye had arranged to watch over Xiaoye's pirates before she went to the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode. Xiaoye nodded slightly and asked, "Why are there so few people in the territory? Did anything happen while I was away?" The one who answered her was the vice leader she relied on the most, Iron Hand. An obscure ripple flashed in the depths of Iron Hand's eyes before he replied calmly, "Leader, they are currently patrolling outside the Alliance, in case someone tries to harm us while the Pirate Alliance is empty." Hearing that, Xiaoye was not overly suspicious and praised, "Well done." After a pause, Xiaoye asked, "Is there anything else to report?" Iron Hand said, "Half a year ago, Vice Leader Su Leader Su led the remnants of the Sea Wolves pirates and returned first. It was obvious that Iron Hand had been deceived by Suyu. He had mistakenly thought that Xiaoye had died and was successfully controlled by Suyu with a seal. Therefore, he could only help Suyu lie to the end. What? Xiaoye was shocked. Half a year ago, wasn't that the day they were imprisoned in the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode? Impossible! How did Su Yu come out alone? There were so many experts of that time, and with the combined strength of everyone, it took them several months to break open a gap and escape to the sky. How did Su Yu achieve such a feat by himself? That was impossible. However, it was clear that Iron Hand would not tell such an easily exposed lie for no reason. Xie Xiaoye's eyes sparkled. Star Lady's advice involuntarily appeared in his mind. Su Yu was golden-eyed Longjuan's man. Apart from Su Yu, golden-eyed Langjun and the others had also disappeared from the Heavenly Legacy Cavern. Hence, it was highly likely that Su Yu had left with the golden-eyed Langjun and the rest. Who would believe that he was not golden-eyed Longjuan's man? Su Rushu. How do you want me to deal with you? Xie Xiaoye felt complicated. From her initial admiration for Su Yu to her pleasant surprise, then to her hatred for his betrayal, her feelings were extremely complicated. She didn't want to kill Su Yu. However, logically speaking, Su Yu, who was extremely intelligent, had to die. His heart sank into an intense struggle. After a long time, she gritted her teeth and ordered, "Pass down my order. Invite the other pirate leaders over. Tell them that I have a matter of life and death to invite them. Remember, do not make it public." This subordinate understands. As Xie Xiaoye's most trusted subordinate, Iron Hand immediately sent a message to Su Yu after he left the main ship. Su Yu, who had received the news, was sitting cross-legged on the Dustless Pirate's main ship, cultivating leisurely. "I once said that you might regret using me one day," Su Yu said to himself. Back then, in order to monopolize all the ransom, Xie Xiaoye had recommended Su Yu to be the new pirate leader. At that time, he had said that in his heart. Very quickly, after settling down the few leaders in his own region, he came to Xie Xiaoye's main ship to discuss something. Knowing that Su Yu was most likely a spy sent by the golden-eyed Langjun, everyone was in disbelief. Everyone had witnessed Su Yu climb to the position of pirate leader step by step with their own eyes. How could they have seen any sign that he was a spy? However, knowing that Su Yu had returned half a year after encountering them, they had no choice but to believe it. "Leader Xiaoye, how do you think we should deal with him?" The Green Phoenix leader could not bear to see Su Yu die. After all, Su Yu had saved her life. She really did not want to believe that Su Yu was a spy. "Lead all the corps members and force Su Yu to surrender." Xie Xiaoye's tone was slightly serious. The Green Phoenix leader was doubtful. Is there a need to mobilize so many people? He is but a mere half-path master. Xie Xiaoye calmly shook her head. Half-path master is not scary. What is scary is that he is golden-eyed Longjuan's man. At the mention of golden-eyed Langjun, all the pirate leaders present felt a chill in their hearts. Golden-eyed Langjun had schemed against the past and the present. He had almost wiped out all the strong men of the 7 unique civilizations and monopolized them. It was only because of the intervention of an expert that the danger was averted. If Su Yu was really golden-eyed Longjuan's man, did he come back with a hidden agenda? Therefore, Xie Xiaoye had no choice but to be cautious. "I agree, we cannot be careless." The few pirate leaders immediately agreed. Only the Green Phoenix leader frowned slightly, but she could do nothing to them. Half a day later, the 9 great pirate leaders and a group of corps members surrounded the main ship of the Dustless Pirate. They had come so suddenly and with such a large number of people, the Dustless Pirates were caught off guard and surrounded by warships 10 times their size. Standing on the main ship and looking around, all they could see was dense black cloud. Xie Xiaoye stood on the giant warship in the center, her eyes cold and stern. She shouted, "Deputy Leader Su, come out, we have something to discuss with you." Swish! The space in front of them warped, and Su Yu's figure suddenly appeared in front of them. His appearance was so strange that it caused everyone's pupils to constrict fiercely. Especially Xie Xiaoye, who blurted out in shock, "Space domain?" Those who had comprehended the space law were rare, and those who could turn it into a domain were rare geniuses. Su Yu had done it? Oh? What are you here to discuss with me? Suyu stood with his hands clasped behind his back, calm and composed. His eyes swept past Xiaoya and the so-called core members, beside the few other pirates. Perhaps the few pirate leaders still did not understand that their core members were already Suyu's. The ones who were truly surrounded were not Suyu, but them. After a brief moment of shock, Xiaoya gradually regained her composure. So what if it was the space domain in front of a huge army? She could not escape death. If Suyu was really golden-eyed Longjuan's spy. Xiaoya's eyes were cold, and she said coldly, I want to ask you something, and I hope you can answer me truthfully. Please speak, Suyu said indifferently. Xiaoya said seriously, Are you golden-eyed Longjuan's spy? The rest of the pirates stared at Suyu, hoping to get a negative answer from him. Of course I am. However, Suyu did not even try to hide it, admitting it on the spot. Chapter 2270. The hope of many pirates was mercilessly shattered. They had thought that a peerless genius had appeared out of nowhere in the Pirate Alliance. Unexpectedly, he was just a spy that the golden-eyed Langjun had arranged for them. Their hope was shattered. It was as if a magic box of hatred had been opened, and billowing anger rushed out from within. Instantly, it was filled with curses and curses, as well as thick murderous intents. Xiaoya only felt a buzzing in her ears. She had already lost the ability to think, and her mind was blank. After a long while, her eyes regained focus. With an indescribable pain in her heart, she murmured, Su Rushu, what do you want from me? Did I do anything wrong to you? Suyu looked at Xiaoya, a hint of gentleness in his eyes. Among the 10 great pirates, Xiaoya was the only one he owed. When he had kidnapped the greedy Wolf King and been chased by the second peerless family, Xiaoya had appeared to resolve the crisis. More importantly, she had given Suyu a priceless treasure, the heaven's pure dust. Staring into Xiaoya's eyes, Suyu's tone softened. Leader Xiaoya, being a pirate is ultimately not the right path. Repent before it's too late. Tears welled up in Xiaoya's eyes. Disappointment and hatred combined to form a unique glow. She said, None of your business. Of course, Suyu did not need to care. He just did not want Xiaoya to continue making mistakes. Although she had always restrained herself and her subordinates and rarely committed murder, she had accumulated too much resentment by relying on plundering for a living. It was only a matter of time before the Pirate Alliance was eliminated. By then, as the number 1 person in the Pirate Alliance, Xiaoya would not be able to escape death. In the area governed by the 7 absolute civilizations, her strength might be considered decent. However, after experiencing so many things in the Heavenly Legacy Cavern, Xiaoya should understand that if someone really wanted to eliminate the Pirate Alliance, it would actually be very easy. Leader Xiaoya, why are you still talking nonsense with him? The eyes of the Northern Plains pirates were spitting fire. This man has been undercover in the Pirate Alliance for so long. Who knows how much information he has sold to the 7 absolute civilizations? Kill him now, and we will immediately change our base. Kill? How can it be so easy? The Red-Beard pirate said ferociously. If he dares to be an undercover in the Pirate Alliance, he must be prepared to die. Humph, indeed, death is not the scariest thing. The scariest thing is to live, but to die. A soft-looking pirate leader said indifferently, Leave this brat to me. I will definitely make him regret being born. The pirate leader was indeed qualified to say that. This was because he was the most infamous pirate among all the pirate leaders. Leader Mara. He was the only person who had managed to become a Dowlord because he was good at using torture. When he was a mortal, he was once an executioner. After he stepped onto the path of martial arts, he focused on studying torture. In the end, he defied the heavens and stepped onto the path of the great Tao, becoming a Dowlord. No one who fell into his hands had ever had a good ending. Even a Tao master would rather die than stay in the hands of Chief Mara for a moment longer. However, ever since Mo Luo joined the Pirate Alliance, he had spent most of his time diligently cultivating, hoping to increase his cultivation and extend his lifespan. Therefore, it had been a long time since he had used torture on anyone. Upon hearing that Chief Mara planned to take action personally, a few of the pirate chiefs were energized and laughed excitedly. "This is how you should treat spies. Cut open his stomach and see how bold he is to actually dare to betray us. Chief Mara, after the torture, please leave him alive. Let him send a message to the 7 unique civilizations. Tell them that the revenge of the Pirate Alliance will come soon. Yes, intimidate everyone. Humph! A group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered dares to resist us." Su Yu's heart did not waver as he looked at them. The Pirate Alliance was a place of corruption, a gathering place for many evil people. No matter how cruel they were, it was within Su Yu's expectations. He increasingly felt the necessity of eradicating the Pirate Alliance. Chief Mara's tiny eyes were like those of a snake. He stared at Su Yu, then finally looked at Xie Xiaoye, who had not said a word. No matter what, Su Yu was Xie Xiaoye's man. How to deal with Su Yu was up to her. "Leader Xiaoye, how about leaving him to me?" Xie Xiaoye clenched her fists and looked at Su Yu one last time. "Su Rushu, let me ask you, do you regret being a spy for the 7 unique civilizations?" "I don't regret it." She wanted to give Su Yu one last chance. However, Su Yu did not even think about it. Xie Xiaoye was silent for a while, her eyes dimming bit by bit. Finally, she took a long breath and said indifferently, "I will deal with him personally." Hearing that, everyone was disappointed. Chief Mara was even more regretful. He had finally decided to demonstrate his extreme punishment once again, but Xie Xiaoye did not give him the chance. Xie Xiaoye pressed her hands down, signaling for everyone to be quiet. She looked at Su Yu and said, "As a spy in the Pirate Alliance, you are not an exception." "Understood," Su Yu said indifferently. Xie Xiaoye slowly raised her finger and pointed it at Su Yu from afar. She closed her eyes in pain. Then, "I'm sorry." A gust of Path Master's strength landed on Su Yu's chest. Su Yu, who was a half-step Path Master, would definitely die from that blow. However, no one expected that not only did Su Yu not die, but that blow also disappeared. Su Yu stood where he was, unscathed. Xie Xiaoye sensed that something was amiss. She opened her eyes and could not help but be surprised. You obtained a defensive treasure in the Heavenly Legacy Cavern? To be able to defend against a Path Master's attack, it could only be a defensive treasure, right?" Su Yu brushed off the remnants of the Path Master's strength on his chest and said indifferently, "To be precise, I have always had such a physique. It's just that you did not realize it." Hearing that, none of the pirates present believed it. A mere half-step Path Master could have a physique that surpassed a family master's? Who would believe that? Humph! Little B** starred, "How dare you be so arrogant in the Pirate Alliance? Let me see how strong your physique is." The Northern Plains leader snorted angrily. An image of a green dragon appeared behind him as he strode forward. The image of the green dragon was naturally his domain. Once the domain was activated, the main body would gain 10 times the strength. The strength of his physique would instantly approach that of a family master's. When Xie Xiaoye wanted to stop him, the Northern Plains leader had already rushed forward and attacked first. He pointed a finger at Su Yu's forehead. The strength was so great that it made all the pirates present shudder with fear. However, in the next moment, Su Yu turned into a half-human half-dragon, raised his right fist, and smashed it at the Northern Plains leader. In an instant, the domain of the Northern Plains leader, who was famous for his physique, was shattered. Shortly after, his whole body was penetrated by Su Yu's fist like a piece of paper. The Northern Plains leader's body went limp little by little. In the end, he fell from the sky and landed on the warship, motionless. He was dead. The dignified Northern Plains leader had been killed by someone's physique? Su Yu lowered his head and wiped the path master's blood off his fist. He said calmly, I told you, my physique is very strong. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Chapter 2271. Su Yu's words reverberated in the silent sky above the battleship. All the pirates, including Xie Xiaoye, gasped as they looked at Su Yu, who was in his half-human, half-dragon form. Xie Xiaoye's crystalline pupils shrank. She had thought that Su Yu's greatest reliance was Menkir. Who would have thought that he was a top-notch expert himself? Clenching her fists, Xie Xiaoye said in a low voice, Su Rushu. Please remember, this is the Pirate Alliance, where all the pirates in the world gather. Can you fight everyone by yourself? Su Yu was alone, after all. Even with the ocean wave pirates, he didn't even have a tenth of their strength. The disparity between them meant that Su Yu had no chance of survival. Su Yu raised his eyes, his expression calm as he said, I'd like to say the same to you 8 leaders. This is the Pirate Alliance, so please don't do anything that will cause others to misunderstand. Otherwise, the consequences will be terrible. Hearing that, several of the pirate leaders laughed in anger. Chief Moro laughed. This kid is crazy. Leader Xiaoye, what are you hesitating for? You will be the leader, and the 7 of us will be the assistants. All the half-Dao masters will be on standby. We must keep this kid here forever. Yes. Dozens of half-Dao masters flew over from their respective pirate group. However, most of them were not surrounding Su Yu, but several of the pirate leaders. The other half of the pirate leaders suddenly noticed the strange behavior of their companions. They could not help but be startled. Chief Moro narrowed his eyes as he stared at the pirate leaders surrounding them. Did you betray us? Xie Xiaoye stared at one of the pirates and said in disbelief, Iron Hand, can you tell me what's going on? The deputy leader, Iron Hand, whom she had trained for many years, had betrayed her. Iron Hand lowered his head, his face full of shame. Don't ask me, I'm just following orders. Swish. Numerous gazes fell upon Su Yu. Xie Xiaoye said stiffly, I've really underestimated you. She should have known that Su Yu had come back half a year earlier. You flatter me, Su Yu said calmly. I'll say it one last time. Don't do anything that will cause others to misunderstand. When had Chief Moro ever feared anyone in his life? He immediately issued an order to the half-step Daolords who had followed him to the Heavenly Legacy Cave and hadn't been controlled by Su Yu. Kill him. Those half-step Daolords might not be able to kill Su Yu, but they could still throw him into confusion. The dozen or so half-step Daolords braced themselves and charged forward with murderous intent. Boom, 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 but at this moment, hundreds of pirate warships in the distance suddenly opened fire. The power of those cannons was no weaker than that of a half-step Daolord. Hundreds of cannons were fired in an instant. One could imagine the scene. The half-step Daolords who were besieging Su Yu were instantly bombarded into nothingness. It was worth mentioning that the warships that opened fire were the main warships of the few pirate leaders. They had just ridden it. Chief Mara's eyelids twitched slightly. He took a look at his main battleship, and his eyes gradually turned gloomy. You've even controlled the people on my main battleship? Su Yu nodded, then shook his head lightly. To be precise, all of your pirates are under my command, except for those who are already dead. As if in response to Su Yu's words, the densely packed giant warships all extended their cannons and aimed them at Chief Mara from afar. The number of giant warships in the Pirate Alliance was no less than 10,000. The cannons on each of the giant warships numbered at least 10,000, and some even had hundreds of thousands of cannons. If the cannons of 10,000 warships were all aimed at a single person, even a Daolord who had opened his domain would be annihilated. Chief Mara's pupils shrank and he stood there, not daring to move. The rest of the pirate leaders also broke out in a cold sweat. All of the pirates had been subdued by Su Yu? Xie Xiaoye was stunned for a long time. Then, she sighed deeply and said in a low voice, Su Rushu, you've won. When she had returned, she had wondered why so many people were missing from her domain. Now that she thought about it, they must have been killed. Now, it wasn't them who had led the pirates to surround Suyu. It was Suyu who had led all the pirates to surround them. Suyu said calmly, "I didn't want to defeat you. I just wanted to save you." Just as he had said before, being a pirate was not the right path, and it was difficult for him to have a good ending. The corners of Xiaoya's mouth twitched slightly, and she made a smiling face. However, it was a mocking expression. She just didn't know whether she was mocking herself or Suyu. Suyu turned to look at the rest of the pirate leaders, and his eyes became fierce. Surrender or die. Several pirate leaders were so furious that their chests were about to explode. The pirate alliance that they had spent their entire lives building had ultimately become a weapon that threatened them. Although they were angry, they naturally had to protect themselves when their lives were in danger. "What do you want to do to us?" Chief Mara bellowed in a deep voice. "Release your souls." Chief Mara's heart shook, and he released his souls without changing his expression. Suyu wanted to control their souls? That was just wishful thinking. Their souls had already been transformed, and their souls were indestructible. Suyu was merely a half-step Daolord, so his soul couldn't be as strong as a Daolord's, could it? It was absolutely impossible for him to control them with his own soul. He would pretend to be controlled first, and then give Suyu a fatal blow afterward. However, Chief Mara did not expect that Suyu would not use his own soul to control them. Instead, a black cat the size of a palm appeared on his shoulder. The black cat meowed at Chief Mara, and a black speck of light shot into Chief Mara's soul from its eyes. All of a sudden, Chief Mara felt that there was an additional mark that was deeply engraved in the depths of his soul. Within that mark, there was a soul energy that was far stronger than his own. Once the mark exploded, it would be enough to destroy his soul completely. Chief Mara's face turned pale in an instant. His wishful thinking had failed. What is this?" Suyu replied calmly, "The sixth treasure of the Tiani Cavern." The Tiani Great Emperor's body was divided into 6 major parts. His limbs and heart had all appeared, but the remaining parts had yet to be revealed. The malicious soul stone came from the skull, and it was also his soul. Wouldn't it be easy for the Tiani Great Emperor's soul to suppress the soul of a mere path master? Next, Suyu waved his hand, and the giant cannons of the 10,000 ships locked onto another pirate leader. The pirate leader shuddered, and he released his soul in humiliation and unwillingness, allowing himself to be controlled by the malicious soul stone. Just like that, several pirate leaders succumbed to Suyu's control. When it was the Green Phoenix leader's turn, she laughed bitterly and said, "Don't aim at me, I'll do it myself." She had released her soul on her own, and Suyu had placed a seal on it. Suyu smiled indifferently. Apart from Xiaoya, the only one whom Suyu felt he could forgive was probably the Green Phoenix leader. From what he had gathered, this woman had been imitating Xiaoya, and was similarly strict with her subordinates. Moreover, they had interacted with each other before. Finally, Suyu looked at Xiaoya, his expression slightly complicated. "Xiaoya, it's your turn." Xiaoya had kept her head lowered, and no one could see her expression clearly. At this moment, she raised her eyes, which were filled with faint hatred. This debt will be settled sooner or later." After saying this, she suddenly took out a black iron-colored wing from her sleeve and stuck it on her back. The wing was surrounded by a black light. It had obviously been secretly activated for a long time, and it had been fully activated. This item was a relic that Xiaoya had obtained in the Tiani Cavern. Once activated, it had the ability to travel through space that was comparable to the Wanzong beast. She had been holding back, secretly activating it. The black wing turned into a beam of light, and with the instantaneous space movement, it disappeared from its original spot. The giant cannons of the 10,000 giant warships could not catch up. Having lost Xiaoya, the swordsman in the snow sighed. The strongest of the pirate leaders had escaped. Their operation this time was considered half a failure. Only Suyu quietly sighed. "I'll let you go. Take care." If he really wanted to stop her, with Suyu's current space domain, it would not be difficult for him to stop her. He did not attack, deliberately letting her go. This was also one of his initial plans. After all, Xie Xiaoya had helped him before, so he would not really do anything to her. Collecting his thoughts, Suyu turned to look at the pirate alliance behind him. "Follow me." The entire pirate alliance boarded the warships and left the old nest in a grandiose manner. In the void, far away from the old nest, Suyu ordered all the warships to turn around and fire at the old nest civilization. In an instant, a giant civilization comparable to a 6-star civilization was bombarded into nothingness. The sky was filled with flames, illuminating the faces of all the pirates, making them look incomparably complicated. At that moment, a loud voice rang out in their minds. "From this day on, the Pirate Alliance is completely disbanded." This sentence announced the end of the hundreds of millions of years of history of the Pirate Alliance. From now on, there would be no more Pirate Alliance, only a Cauldron. Suyu did not look back. His eyes were looking straight at the 7 unique civilizations, and he murmured, "That thing can finally be done." Although it was not quite the same as what he had imagined. At that time, the 7th Peerless family. In the guest hall, Xia Yan held an invitation letter in his hand, his finger gently tapping on it. Xia Rukin, who was beside him, stared at the invitation letter, his eyes filled with intense passion. "Father, when did you get the invitation letter? Why didn't we know about it?" Xia Rukin asked excitedly. An event that the heir of the 7th Peerless family looked forward to was obviously important. At least, there was no event in the 7 unique civilizations that could attract him. Xia Yan said calmly, "A long time ago." Xia Rukin understood tacitly. A long time ago, when Xia Yan was traveling in the star region, perhaps under some special circumstances, he had obtained this incomparably precious invitation letter. "Then, when do we set off?" "The date set on the invitation letter is approaching." Xia Rukin could not bear the itch in his heart. Xia Yan's brows were filled with a sense of tiredness that could not be dispelled. After pondering for a long time, he said, "Before we set off, I want to confirm something." "What is it?" "To be precise, I want to confirm a person. That person might be related to the ancestor."